much. I would remind members to turn off your mobile phones. We're going to open in public session. We do have quorum. I'm going to call the meeting to order and advise those in the public gallery that they are welcome to use mobile devices and as long as they are in airplane mode, and all devices must be muted, and it's not permitted to take photographs or record any of the meeting. We have one apology that I'm aware of, and that's Tom Buchanan. Then members attending via Zoom will be Anya Murphy, and is Aoife going to join us via Zoom as well? Okay, excellent. Okay, members, as spoken about before, if you, in terms of declarations of interest, if you want to remind you of your responsibility to declare any interest in regard to any of the items under discussion today. So do any members have any interest to declare in relation to any of today's matters? No? Okay, agenda item 3, going to rattle through quite a bit of chairperson's business, and if you will bear with me. First point is a referral to page 7 of the pack, the correspondence from the chair of the committee for the economy regarding our joining our informal session at the Balmoral show. As you recall, we had agreed to hold an engagement event after the formal meeting. However, there seems to have been some crossed wires, as this is planned with engagement to be a Q&A with young farmers after our main meeting, with members of the economy committee in advance with us if they wished. However, the memo refers to a roundtable event, which isn't something that we had suggested. I propose we send a memo back to the Economy Committee describing the informal event and invite members of that committee to be in attendance if they wish, and the clerk will speak to the Economy clerk. There will be time for an informal conversation after the Q&A. Michelle, you something on that? Are you content with that proposal, guys? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Number 2, I refer you to clerk's memo dated 11th of April, page 9 of the pack from the clerk to the Committee for the Economy regarding a response from Ofcom, which is at page 10 to 13 of your pack. The response provides clarification on the provision of telecommunications and mobile coverage in Northern Ireland, Ofcom's role in service level agreements between open reach communication providers and Ofcom's resilience policies. The Committee for the Economy agreed to forward the correspondence in respect of the scheduled joint concurrent meeting, which is happening on the 28th of May. Have you any comments, or are you content to note for now? Thank you, members. Item number 3, I refer you to an invitation at page 14 to 15 of the pack from the Northern Ireland Sheep Industry Task Force to attend a meeting on the 1st of July at 8:30 a.m. as part of the National Sheep Association's sheep event at the McFarland Family Farm in Dungiven. The meeting will focus on the future of the sheep sector support in Northern Ireland. Have you any comments, or are you content to note? I believe that is a plenary day, unfortunately, so it would be a great event to obviously attend, so leave that with members. Number 4, I refer you to an invitation dated the 18th of April at page 16 of the pack from the Nature Friendly Farm Network to visit a local nature friendly farm and see firsthand the positive impact of farming with nature. Have you any comments to make? This is already on our list of potential visits, by the way. Thank you, members. Item number 5, I refer you to page 17 of the pack to correspondence dated the 17th of April from the Woodlands Trust requesting the opportunity to brief the committee on the key findings and recommendations in its State of the Woods and Trees report due to be launched on Tuesday the 14th of October in the Long Gallery. Have you any comments, or are you content to add it to the forward work plan and see that near the time if there is a potential to meet even informally with the Woodlands Trust on that day? Content, members? Thank you. Item number 6, I refer you to page 18 to 28 of the pack to the restricted legal advice from legal services. Members, we requested this following our meeting on the 24th of March as part of our due diligence on fair farm prices and the proposed farm welfare bill. It provides legal advice regarding whether the matters in the bill are reserved and legal guidance on whether legislative developments in Westminster in respect of support for farmers would implement similar provisions to the bill. Members, as we need to consider legal advice in closed session, I propose we do that at next week's meeting to give us all time to consider the advice in the meantime. And are you content with that course of action? Yep. Thank you, members. Just to let you guys or make you aware, I had an online meeting during the Easter recess with the Farmers for Action. It was a very good meeting, I have to say, but it'll be good to get this piece of work and do our due diligence on it and ensure that we are as fair as we can be. Item number 7, for your information, I refer you to pages 29 to 32 of the pack to a press release from DEFRA stating that Baroness Minette Batters, a former NFU president and a farmer, has been appointed to lead a farm profitability review. Members, any comments to make? Are you content to note? Thank you. Item number 8, I refer you to an invitation at page 33 of the pack to a guest lecture on the 26th of May at 6:30 in the Great Hall of Queens to be given by Professor Ermias Kabrib of the University of California Davis, entitled Methane, the Real Story. The lecture is being organised as part of the UK Dairy Carbon Network project. Have you any comments you can tend to note? Okay, members. Item number 9, referred to invitation, page 35 to 36 of the pack, to join Agri-Search on Thursday the 15th of May at 7:30 a.m. in the Members' Pavilion at the Balmoral show for breakfast event, The Last Mile, where research meets results. So that's 7:30 on Thursday the 15th. You may have received an email from them. That's the day we're having our committee there. So be content to note. Thank you. Item number 10, refer to pages 48 of the table papers to correspondence dated the 18th of April from the Warrenpoint Community Association, also sent to Minister Muir and to the OEP. It raises concerns regarding what they believe to be multiple significant breaches of waste management regulations at the Warrenpoint Harbour Authority in relation to Regen's waste management operations in the NIEA response to the situation. Members, have you any comments? Are you content that we request that the Minister copies this committee into any response that he makes to the letter? Thank you, members. Item number 11, referred to page 9 of the table papers to a response dated 29th of April from the Minister with an update on the wildfires that I had requested. Members, since the Mournes wildfire in 2021, the Department has grant-funded the National Trust to undertake restoration works and supported the Mournes Heritage Trust and the NIFRS to maintain the wildfire control points within the Eastern Mournes project. Officials are reviewing the process to develop a wider wildfire plan for the Mournes and will initiate a procurement exercise as there were no applications for the previous one. The Minister intends to bring the strategic way forward for wildfires that will set out recommendations for the future direction of the management of Northern wildfire problem to the Executive shortly. Have any members any comments you want to make, or are you content to note? Content to note? Okay.
John, how you doing?
No problem. Okay, members, agenda item 4, and that is our minutes of the April the 10th meeting. Refer members to pages 39 to 51 of the pack for the draft minutes dated the 10th of April. Have members any comments? Are you content with the minutes as drafted? And if so, I will sign them as published to be published on the website. Members are content. Thank you, members. Agenda item 5. Okay, agenda item 5, matters arising. Members are referred to response dated the 11th of April, starting at page 53 of the pack from the Department regarding the Lough Neagh Action Plan. At our meeting on the 13th of March, we agreed to request a summary ready reference table of all the actions in the Lough Neagh Plan with an update on progress in each one. A copy of the table starts at page 55 of the pack. Table 1 provides an overview summary of the 37 actions and their current status, of which 10 are delivered. In relation to the 27 actions not yet delivered, Table 2 provides an update for the 23 that are currently progressing, and Table 3 provides an update with those 4 actions yet to be progressed. Are members content to note? Are there any comments in regard to this? I'm grateful for what has been provided. I think it offers a good template. I would suggest that we request that DAERA use the tables as a template to keep us updated at reasonably regular intervals. Obviously, these things take time to embed, and we don't want to do any paralysis by analysis, but at the same time our analysis is really important, so we'll keep very live to this. Thank you, members. Okay, matters rising number 2, referred to response dated the 15th of April at page 62 to 64 of the pack from HMRC regarding taxation. As you will recall, at our meeting on the 20th of March, we considered the tax implications on payments to farmers arising from the Farming for Sustainability Knowledge Transfer Payment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025, and asked for HMRC to confirm the position. The response states that HMRC have received information on the payments from DAERA officials, and its view is that both payments, hosting and learner, are likely to be taxable, as the conditions attached and activities that the recipients would need to undertake appear to be intrinsically linked to their farming trade, and so should be included in the farm's usual tax return as a trading receipt. If the activities were not a receipt of the farming trade, miscellaneous income rules would likely tax the income. Any comments to make? Are you content to note?
No.
Okay, thank you, members. Matters rising number 3, referred to pages 65 to 73 of the pack for the response from the Department dated 23rd of April regarding fair farm pricing, farm gate prices. At our meeting on 20th of March, we agreed to write to the Department to request an update on all of DAERA's input to DEFRA on the development of fair dealing regulations, and also on any other connected matter. I will briefly summarise the response from DAERA. So the update on the fair dealing regulations: it was DEFRA's reviews on a sector-by-sector basis are at various stages, as summarised in the attached appendix to the letter. Officials ensure that specific NI issues are, as far as possible, addressed. An update on the Groceries Code Adjudicator, GCA, and Agriculture Supply Chain Adjudicator, ASCA. summary update is included in the appendix. The fourth statutory review of the GCA, covering April 22 to March 2025, which is a 3-year period, is underway to assess how effectively it has been enforcing the Grocery Supplies Code of Practice over the review period. NI stakeholders will have an opportunity to provide input. And an update on the EFRA Committee inquiry. Members, on the 18th of March, the EFRA Committee wrote to the Minister for Food Security and Rural Affairs, Daniel Ziegner MP, detailing interim findings from its inquiry into fairness in the food supply chain. It asked the UK Government to focus on certain areas, including the impact on farmers of inflationary pressures and rises in input costs, promoting more equitable sharing of risks throughout food supply chains, and reforming contractual practices in supply chains by implementation of fair dealing powers across all sectors. An update on the Private Members Bill. Members, on the 19th of March, Mr Alistair Carmichael MP introduced the Private Members Bill, named the Food Products, Market Regulations and Public Procurement. Second reading of the bill is scheduled for the 20th of June 2025. Any agreed changes to the role of the Groceries Code Adjudicator would be UK-wide, and therefore NI farmers could benefit. DERA officials will assess the bill's potential impact as further details emerge. Have members any comments? Are you content to note? Thank you, members. Item number 4, at our meeting on the 3rd of April, we agreed to write to the Department to seek a formal update on the review of arms length bodies. Referred to the pages 74 to 76 of the pack for the response from the Department, dated the 23rd of April. For AFBI, a review has been undertaken in 2024 and is currently under consideration for the NI Fishery Harbour Authority. The draft review report is currently going through an accuracy check before being finalised. For the Livestock Meat Commission for Northern Ireland, a review is planned for 25-26. For the Lochs Agency, as our North-South body, it's not in scope for standards review but was last reviewed in 2008. For the Agricultural Wages Board, it is not subject to full independent reviews, and a light touch review and a light touch review to establish continued need is planned for 26-27. Any comments? Are you content to note that at this stage? Thank you, members. Item number 5, pages 77 to 79 of the pack, for correspondence from the Department dated the 25th of April regarding the budget 25-26, ending violence against women and girls. Members, following our meeting on the 3rd of April, we wrote to the Department asking if it has a role in delivering actions for rural women and girls as part of the strategy. The response states that TO's delivery action plan for 24-26 has 2 specific action points relevant to DERA. Action point 8, which is to develop through sectoral working groups agreed EVAWG action plans in the following sectors: further and higher education, workplace and safer socialising. And action point 9 is to run community-led reviews of the needs of women and girls facing additional risks of VAWG and barriers to access services, and to make recommendations with the first phase to include deaf and disabled women, migrant women and, crucially for us, rural women. DERA officials from both CAFRE and Rural Affairs Division have been engaging with TEO officials to progress both actions, and also regarding e-learning for NICS staff. Members, to date, no specific funding has been requested to support these actions, and none has been allocated or designated within the Department's 25-26 budget, but the Minister is content to consider bids, subject to available funds. Have you any comments? Are you content to note? Content to note. Thank you, members. Referred to pages 80 to 122 of the pack for the substantial and thorough response from Sawgrass Substrates Limited, dated the 15th of April, in response to our letter on the 3rd of April. The response states that the odour is inherent due to the nature of the business of processing organic materials, but that no enforcement notices have been issued following investigation by NIEA. Sawgrass continued to invest in upgrades to existing odour reduction processes, examples of which are detailed in the correspondence. They also detail evidence supporting the effectiveness of odour mitigation processes, and have provided a copy of a process and health audit dated the March 2025. Members, Sawgrass also state that it has regular engagements with NIEA, the PHA and the Mid-Ulster District Council Environmental Health Department, and has submitted a planning application for the installation of advanced odour abatement technology. Members, I think Sawgrass has provided significant evidence to us, and I thank them for that. Have you any further comments at this point, and does this alleviate concerns for members? Did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think I raised this obviously at the meeting whenever the mushroom growers are up here, but certainly it is a serious impact on that local community. It's just outside my constituency, but it's just on the edge of it, and there are people impacted, and you can find the odour in the local community, people's homes, local football pavilion. So it is a serious issue, and I think it's something that if we can have any influence ourselves as a scrutiny committee on these various agencies to up their game to try to deal with it, it is a serious impact on the local population there.
Yep, well, agreed. Patty?
Just one thing. and I'm not in any instance doubting the veracity of what we've been provided with there, but point 1 refers to compliance with NIE environmental requirements. It might be useful if we got NIE's take on this response, if that's okay.
Well, I agree. I actually think we could also write to Middlesbrough District Council as well, because they have the powers of enforcement there, obviously, as well as EA. So it's been alluded to, there's been inspections carried out, and if we could get Middlesbrough Council's environmental arm response as well, as are members happy with that? Yeah, I think it is. I think Sawgrass's response is reasonable, and so far they seem to be taking action. But the difficulty, as you've rightly outlined, is that if the odour's still there and it's permeating into people's houses and stuff.
Even when you're passing through the community in your car, you can smell it, and the people are living there all the time.
Yeah. I get that. Okay. Thank you, members. We would often share there's such responses with the original correspondence also. Members, in this instance, I would ask the clerk to check with Sawgrass in the first instance regarding any commercial sensitivities around sharing the information that they have given us. And our members content that the response is shared with CCRA once the necessary checks are carried out. That's on top of obviously writing to NIEA, getting an update from them and the council. Yeah. Is that okay? Thanks, members. Okay. Item number 7, I refer you to pages 12 to 17 of the table of papers for the response from the Department dated 28th of April in relation to water quality. At our meeting of the 10th of April, we agreed to write to the Department to request an update on the progress of the draft 3rd Cycle River Basin Management Plan and an update from DERA and NIEA on the progress of implementing the recommendations from the NIAO report on water quality in Northern Ireland's rivers and lakes. The Department states that the Minister has approved the 3rd cycle RBMP and that has been submitted to the Executive for consideration as it is cross-cutting. That's good news. Members, the response also provides an update on the progress of implementing the recommendations from the NIAO report on water quality in Northern Ireland's rivers and lakes. As this was an issue raised in connection with the potential inquiry, we will return to this matter at a meeting in the near future for a more in-depth discussion on the potential for a focused piece of work for the committee. Okay. There are a series of recommendations there from the NIAO which we were in reference to, so members will have those in their papers. Are there any comments to be made on that, or are you content to note at this stage? We will be returning to it. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 6 is the oral briefing from the Department in relation to the Food Strategy Framework Action Plan. So, members, I refer you to pages 124 to 127 of the pack for briefing on the NI Food Strategy Framework Action Plan, which is due to be published this month. A copy of the action plan is at pages 128 to 151 of the pack. So, I'm going to welcome the following DERA officials to brief the committee and answer any questions. We have Ms Alison Chambers, Director of Sustainable Agri-Food Development Division, DERA, Ms Joy Alexander, Deputy Director of Sustainable Agri-Food Development Division, DERA, and Ms Fiona Ferguson, of the Head of Food Strategy Policy at DERA. So, once you are comfortable, and make yourselves comfortable, we would welcome you to give your presentation to the members, and then we'll go through a series of questions and stuff, if that's all right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for bringing us along here today to brief you on the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework Action Plan. You know, the Executive agreed to the publication of the action plan at its meeting on the 20th of March, and the Minister intends to publish it in May. Nonetheless, we would really welcome any comments and questions that you have today. So, by way of background, we've led the development of the cross-departmental Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework, and the framework itself aims to address a strategic food policy gap in Northern Ireland. It takes an innovation food systems approach, and by a food system approach I mean embracing all the elements and activities that are involved in feeding a population: the production, processing, packaging, distribution, marketing, consumption and disposal of food. And the food systems approach has a view to achieving better health, environmental, social and economic goals by taking a whole of government approach and aligning strategies that affect the food system. We acknowledge the ambition in this approach and that food systems thinking is very much in its infancy worldwide, but believe we have an opportunity to make meaningful change. Following executive approval, the framework was published in November 2024, and the Minister was very keen to progress the development of the action plan at pace. So the approach that we took in the design of the action plan has been to identify actions which can be delivered in the remaining 2 years of this executive's mandate. It's been developed collaboratively across departments and with other public sector partners, including the Food Standards Agency, NI and Invest NI, recognising the interconnectedness of social, health, economic, environmental matters relating to food. It has a deliberate focus on creating capability and a solid evidence base to build upon in future action plans. And this closely aligns with its inclusion within the Shaping a Better Tomorrow section of the Programme for Government. A key component of the plan going forward will be to co-design future interventions with stakeholders. And the approach we've taken reflects the challenging budgetary situation, taking a no-cost or modest additional cost approach to actions where feasible. And it also acknowledges the significant period of policy development across our partner departments. So the action plan has been structured around 3 missions, and this distills the 4 priorities of the strategy. Mission 1 is to use food to improve lifelong health and well-being. Mission 2, to support environmentally sustainable, safe and ethical agri-food supply chains. And Mission 3, to further develop sustainable economic prosperity within the agri-food sector. And priority 4 of the strategy, food culture and a food-conscious society, is interwoven across all 3 missions because we recognise that behavioural change really needs to cut across all of the actions. So there are 39 proposed actions contained within the plan, with 28 of these being assigned to a single lead department and 11 with a joint lead. DAERA, we're leading on 15 actions and sharing the lead on a further 7. And strong relationships have been built with colleagues across departments, Invest NI and the Food Standards Agency. We undertook a process of targeted stakeholder engagement involving key stakeholders representing the agri-food industry, voluntary and community sector, environmental NGOs, academia and young people. Feedback was very positive from the stakeholders, and they're very keen to be involved in progressing the delivery of the action plan. In terms of reporting, it's proposed that a progress report will be provided to the Executive at the end of a 2-year period, rather than an OBA approach at this stage. Progress will be monitored via a cross-departmental food programme board, which is chaired by a Deputy Secretary in DAERA. Finally, you may be aware that UK Government has announced its plan for a food strategy. They acknowledge the devolved nature of food, but also the interconnectedness across the UK as a whole. And it's encouraging to see that their proposed area of focus aligns with our own priorities. They intend as their first action to develop an outcomes framework during 2025, and we're closely involved in this process, and therefore future reporting methodology will seek to align with this and avoid duplication. That's my opening presentation. If you would like, Joy and Fiona can give you a quick canter through the action plan itself, just a high-level synopsis, if that would be helpful.
That would be useful, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the invitation here this morning. Delighted to be able to tell you a little bit about the Food Action Plan. So, as we said, there are 3 missions, and the first mission is around improving lifelong health and well-being. And I suppose within that one there, a key element is about addressing food inequalities. And there's a number of actions that are sort of in that area. Again, as I say, working with colleagues across other departments. Another key focus in the health one is really around children and young people. And we start off sort of with a particular focus around the whole lifelong journey from preschool through the school education process and also engaging with children and young people really around, what do they think around food and how can they be involved in shaping future interventions. You'll also be aware that there's been areas of work excuse me, which have been carried out around children's menus, and there was a piece of work was published previously around that, and it's looking around sort of that whole nutritional and health standards that are available out there, and can we really start to address those. And I suppose that sort of leads into, if we want to improve our health and well-being, we need greater access and availability of healthier foods. So there'll be a number of actions that will be based in and around that, making more healthy food much more available, and therefore hopefully changing attitudes around seeking out those healthier options. So that gives you a sort of bit of a broad feeling around the first mission. And I'm going to pass over to Fiona, who's going to talk about the second mission.
So the second mission then is around supporting environmentally sustainable, safe and ethical agri-food supply chains. And really this mission is looking around our environmental scorecard, because that really in the future will go hand in hand with our prosperity. It's around our net zero ambitions, air, water quality, biodiversity, waste. All of these feature very strongly in the food system. So going forward, it's about building that narrative around Northern Ireland food and our green credentials and starting that journey. We need to work through really what that word sustainability means and what metrics will underpin that, and that will be a journey to do that. There will be increasing pressure coming in the next years around how we measure and the data that we produce, and that will come from both government, retailers, investors, insurance, businesses. It will come throughout the whole supply chain. So some of our businesses are already well on this journey, but we have really a spectrum there. So it's making sure that everybody is coming with us on the journey and sees themselves as part of that. And it's about encouraging businesses to start measuring and building data, which will enable them to tell their sustainability narrative and journey in the future. Key to all of this will be really industry capability and skills. So industry and business are vital to driving the delivery of change that we need. We need them to embrace a circular approach, view waste streams as something of potential value and change mindsets. Also looking at supply chain decisions, due diligence, safety, environmental risks, and also the risk of modern slavery. So to make them more aware of their supply chains. And we need to make sure that they've got the support really to do this. So mission 2 is very much around making sure that the support is there for businesses, providing knowledge and skills, and really making sure everybody comes with us on that journey. So the mission 3 then is around our economy and our prosperity. So it's to further develop sustainable economic prosperity within the agri-food sector. And really that's reflecting upon the fact that agri-food is our largest sector. It's our largest manufacturing sector, and it employs large numbers of people, and particularly important to rural and coastal communities. We're in a period of rapid change, and it means we have to look again at our knowledge and skills base and ensure that our businesses and our industry is equipped with the right knowledge and has access to that knowledge and skills base, have access to the best science and support to adopt new technology, maximise data and drive innovation. So it's looking to ensure that we have the right infrastructure there to do that. Access to labour is a major limiting factor to delivering both economic and environmental outcomes. So we have to be able to attract talent into our industry, and to do this, it is about working together to promote that sector attractiveness. We need to make sure that we also have an environment which encourages and nurtures business startups, but also helps established businesses thrive. So it's looking at that support infrastructure across government to make sure that we've got it right, identify where there's gaps, and where there is, that we take steps to put that, to make improvements there. Essential will be leadership, both from government and also from key leaders within the industry. So it's trying to encourage that leadership piece, and also by collaboration, getting industry to work in concert with ourselves, but also with each other to make the changes that are needed. We also are focused around the promotion of Northern Ireland food and how we do that in the future. And also then working collaboratively then across government, both within Northern Ireland with the other DAs and also north-south as required. So that's a very quick canter through in terms of our focus.
Thank you very much. It's really, really good to get this piece of work. I know the Minister, we've had a number of discussions in the Chamber and a number of questions have went around it, it's really good to see the meat on the bones now. I'm looking forward to further discussions and debate in around this. The first piece that kind of jumps out to me, and I think I've got the answer, but I'd like to maybe get it from you guys, is I did ask the Minister previously about any engagement with dietitians in this space, and I think you'd said it because they weren't mentioned in the preface documents that I'd seen. Has there been any engagement at this stage, or is that the next phase when we move into the first mission of engagement with those type of stakeholders?
Yeah, we've engaged very widely with a lot of stakeholders, and that will have included dietitians and food scientists and academics so far, but we will definitely be engaging further as the actions are developed and progressed.
Good. From my perspective, it's a real good opportunity because I'm a firm believer in you are what you eat, and with particularly Mission 1 being centred in around health and healthy outcomes, the impacts are pretty obvious to see in that regard. It is a complex framework that involves many departments, notably health, particularly at the start. And you do talk about the limited access to global food systems thinking to draw upon. What would you suggest is the best way of tracking the progress when there isn't a lot of benchmarking, global benchmarking out there? So how are we going to track the progress of this?
Yeah, and that's where we will be looking at developing the metrics as we go in this initial 2 years, hoping to align to the OBA approach that they are going to develop across the water. We're very much involved across the UK government with the Food Data Transparency Partnership work that's taken place there. And we do recognise the need to have the metrics, but it's, as I said in the presentation, we're going to do a sort of reporting focus on this one, okay. A RAG, red, amber, green kind of status, and we're developing those templates for the other departments at the moment, and revising the governance arrangements because we've gone from developing the framework and the action plan now into implementation and delivery. So we're in that sort of transition period, but I think the huge benefit really for us so far has been the excellent relationships we have with the other departments, their commitment and their passion around food and the food focus, and the degree of collaboration that we've had and agreement.
No problem. Sorry about the bit of background noise. Somebody's having a good day outside. One of the things that jumps out as a challenge for all of us is that we have a level of an unacceptable level of food poverty in Northern Ireland, but we also have, as the report has highlighted, an unacceptable level of food waste. And the report indicates that Northern Ireland probably has, regrettably, the highest level of food waste. It seems to have to be really uncomfortable relations for me that we have on one hand the food poverty. Is there anything in here which looks to understand better why both seem to coexist when evidently they shouldn't, and then what that might look like in terms of the mechanisms to either deal with them exclusively, or is there a link that can be drawn out of those?
So I think we all have to change our behaviours. I think Northern Ireland across the UK is the highest level of food waste at household level, which is a surprise when there are mechanisms there to do that. But if you think about it, sometimes we all purchase more than we need. It's about the whole concept about thinking about what we buy and what we purchase. But also part of this is very much what we would like is that role of businesses, again, leadership about corporate responsibility, to build that instead of seeing waste as waste, to see it as a value stream, and how we can then increase that sort of network of how to use that to ensure that it doesn't go towards waste when there are people hungry, but also the impact that has on carbon emissions as well. So food waste is very much trying to, part of this, trying to drive that down.
Oh, I appreciate that. I see it as a good end. The one the bigger challenge, I suppose, there is eradicating food poverty. So, in terms of eradicating food poverty, is there a line of work in particular? And I know this is cross-departmental, but I mean we do create the world's best food. I think we do. I think it's probably unarguable. Is there something in there that we can do better through this strategy, in terms of really making a difference in that space of food poverty?
And that's where we're working very closely with the Department for Communities. They're obviously bringing forward their draft anti-poverty strategy at the minute. We would like food to really be at the centre of that. And it is reflected, the food strategy framework is reflected in there. We would like to work with them in the social supermarket arena help to bring that forward, and also more community-based opportunities as well. I think there are really, really effective pockets of really effective practice, and part of our challenge really with this action plan is the communications piece, and really celebrating the positive and hoping to make that more common spread across the province, rather than being selective pockets of really effective practice, because there are communities that do take food waste, make sure it gets to where it's needed, and we'd like to grow that, but I think it's a question of people don't know what's actually out there and what is effective practice, and that's where the communications piece for us is going to be really key.
I'm going to do 2 short ones here. I could literally keep this all day on my own, because I think this is such an important piece of work. So two short ones, if that's okay, and then I'll start to bring in other members. One is, in terms of tying this into the sustainability and the environmental piece, anaerobic digesters are a great opportunity, obviously, for reducing carbon emissions. But at the moment, I don't think we're fully utilising the use of food waste in that space. Is that something that is in scope for this, in terms of what we do with, because inevitably we will reduce the waste, but there will be waste. Can we use the waste better in that space, possibly? Is that something that we're looking at?
Yes, I mean, we're very much looking at the science. I'll bring Joy in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're getting into sort of the territory of circularity.
Yes.
And we're working very closely with our colleagues in the Department of Economy, who will be bringing forward their circular economy strategy. But equally, what we do want to do as well is to, again, continue to highlight with businesses that opportunity that somebody's waste is somebody else's raw material. Yes. And really, as we say, it's just the education, that whole piece of just that there are real opportunities here. And again, this is what the basis of this next 2 years is about, is having those conversations, getting the right people into the room, promoting, as I say, that element of circularity, but also the element of food redistribution, sort of come back to your previous point. So that it's a huge area, and it absolutely is in focus.
Brilliant. And my final point, and sorry members if I'm stealing anybody's thunder here, there's a really interesting piece in the blurb where it talks about the importance of tourism and the uptake for food and drink, which is produced here. So it's worth over £400 million, I think, according to the papers. And I think that is I think that's the start. I think that's brilliant, but I think it's the starting point, because I think what we do here. So there is obviously the push and pull of what we produce and the impacts. I think we haven't exploited it. From my perspective, I think we can do more, but obviously we have to be looking at our environmental credentials too. So this directly will speak into that space, I imagine, but it doesn't hinder, I don't think, the ambition for driving prosperity and higher production, but it's more to do with what we do with that production. Would that be fair? That's the thread that I'm picking out of the document. So it's
the balance.
It's balanced, okay. Well, listen, thank you for that. I'm not going to hog it anymore, even though I could. I'm going to invite Deputy Chair, Declan, first of all.
Yeah, thank you very much for this briefing. And I want to share what Robbie said there. It's very important, and I think that in recent years, with the COVID and with the invasion in Ukraine, we just see how delicate the food supply chain is, and strengthens the importance of our own food security here. And I suppose there's just a couple of things maybe I'm very interested in. One of the objectives is about expanding growing spaces. How might that work, in partnership with communities, for example, to expand growing spaces for locally sourced food?
Yep. Well, again, this sort of, I suppose, touches on a number of different points.
Yes.
One is, you've mentioned there a little bit around sort of food security, so growing our own. There's also the health and well-being piece of growing. So this is again part of the exploration that we need to do over this next couple of years. We would be very keen about trying to put together something that will encourage more locally grown at community level. But equally, we are aware that there are a number of different community initiatives that are already out there. So what we don't want to be doing is duplicating, but it's how do we add value? And as I say, it's very much part of sort of the overall mission of of bringing people together, of collaboration to design something that's going to be of value at community level.
And see, in relation to the pilot projects to grow the horticulture sector, have there been any pilot studies developed yet? Or?
Again, that sort of takes us back into our agriculture policy and our colleagues there. I mean, again, unfortunately, you'll be aware that Northern Ireland is towards the bottom of the list in terms of consumption of fruit and vegetables, and we all want to see that increased. So if we can increase the amount of horticulture provision, it also sort of takes us into probably another area of public sector procurement and how we can seek to maximise the amount of consumption. So it's very much, this is a framework, but it's about how do we align all of the different other policies that are out there across the not just DAERA, but other departments, whether it be agriculture or health or whatever, that there are a lot of common ambitions. But can we actually really start to really connect and make sure that we're all heading in towards that same goal?
Yeah, and just a comment then, I suppose the timing's good because this is occurred at the same time as the rollout of the new sustainable agriculture policy, so no doubt yourselves are completely interconnected with the food and farming section of the department around all this.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank
you very much, Declan. And John?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the panel as well. If I could just, the first question, focus on the mission 2 and the piece on safe and ethical agri-food supply chains. Are we in a better or worse place on that than we were 5 or 10 years ago? And if we are in a better place or even a worse place, how do we demonstrate that? I'm mindful that it's my experience, others will disagree, but I'm mindful that recent conversations, for example, about reinstatement of previous policies, there was almost, I felt, a trivialisation of some matters around paperwork and ear tags and other related matters. So I want to know, has that shaped a better position than a previous time or a worse position?
Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I suppose where we are now is that there's increased pressure for data to verify things. Whether or not we have been there in the past, I can't say. But I think we have the whole new challenge that sustainability is seen now through a completely different lens, and the pressures around climate and where we are and where we're going in terms of that direction has put additional pressures. So I think we're probably in a place that with fresh eyes, it's about building that picture and trying to address how we move forward. I don't know if we can compare easily, and that maybe hasn't answered your question, but...
I'll frame part of it slightly differently. The food traceability piece might well sit with your agriculture colleagues. And how do you then relate that to your mission statement on the safe and ethical food supply chain? Do you see that traceability as a major component of that? And can you get information from the agriculture division of DAERA to show that safe and ethical mission is coming to fruition?
Yes, and we have to just work out exactly the information that we'll be looking at and how that is transferred and translated. I'll mention maybe on the environmental piece, the work that's been led by DEFRA around the Food Data Transparency Partnership, and that is very much looking at that how data is created and where the read across is across agriculture, and then how that is interoperable really within the supply chain. So there's an awful lot of work going on about the environmental credentials, what metrics should be, and also about that sort of harmonisation of how things will be measured in the future. So there's a lot of work going on in that space, and a lot of work going on in terms of sustainable agriculture policy, in terms of metrics within that.
Thanks, Fiona. And that environmental aspect that you mentioned there brings me to my second question. The Mission 3 has a statement around the sustainable economic prosperity. There's sometimes a feeling that there's been a greater focus on economic and profitable aspects of the agri-food sector than there has been on the environmental protection aspects. So the question coming from that is, how do we do better to make sure that we're getting that balance right, especially in the context of emerging environmental crises such as Lough Neagh and the state of our waters as well?
I think it goes back to that data piece, and I mentioned about how in the future it's going to be probably there'd be more pressure on businesses to report their environmental credentials, and that will become stronger and stronger. And retailers are certainly in this space now, looking back throughout their supply chains. Insurance companies, investors, all of these people are going to be putting increased pressure in the future around that data piece. So I think the pressure is going to come from there. In terms of the prosperity piece, what we have to do in many respects is how we do more with less, or the same, how we increase our prosperity. So a lot of that will be around increasing our productivity, trying to get higher value, some of the products that we're producing. So how can we maximise that? But it is a very tricky balance, and obviously businesses will want to grow, they'll want to increase their bottom line, but how do we encourage them to do it in a sustainable way? It is a challenge, but we hope to work through this with them, but it is difficult.
I think it's worth pointing out that the missions aren't ranked. Each mission is as important as the other. And within sort of Mission 3, it will be crucial for us to provide that training and education and information that is needed for businesses to be able to manage the information requirements going forward.
And then finally, and that's supplementary to that last question, if there is a greater focus on trying to do more with less, and that leads to an intensification of processes, would there be an automatic food-related analysis of the impact that would have on the quality of the water we drink, such as that comes from Lough Neagh, and also any potential threat to our waterways that I mentioned a moment ago, given that some of the food we eat, i.e. the fish, comes out of those waterways?
I think it's fair to say that we're working, I'm involved in the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, responsible for 2 projects within that, the Future Capital and the Supply Chain Scheme. So we do work really closely together, and food is at the forefront of all of those developments, and the science and the intelligence and the data that's coming forward. So it will be to the forefront as we move forward.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, John. And Patsy, up next.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Just a couple of fairly brief but I hope important points. The first one is the question of diet, learned behaviour, habits and all that type of stuff. What sort of work are you doing with the likes of, say, some of the more advanced health experts along the whole question of processed foods and their impact upon people's health and well-being, and that particular aspect, because it has been flagged up increasingly in more recent times about how that affects people. So therefore the input of health professionals and health experts will be pretty crucial in that. But a note there's one of the points that I would like to just explore a wee bit further. It's in your preamble here. We must also protect the most vulnerable and or disadvantaged in our society and reduce inequalities, ensuring nutritious, sustainable food is accessible to all. And that's probably based on habit, but it's also based on income. And the income that people have in a society is disposable income, and in some instances choice between putting food on the table and the type of food that goes on the table that's the cheapest, that meets a budget. Where I'm going with this is I personally am very, very worried and concerned for people with the proposals that are coming from the UK government around changes to the benefit system. Very worried, especially for those in receipt of some of the disability benefits and the proposed changes for that. So can I ask what, if you like, communication is there with the likes of DFC around, well, at this stage they are proposed changes, but around the potential for impact that that will have on people who are already disabled, who are already disadvantaged, but who will find themselves even more disadvantaged as a consequence of that. And clearly the UK government, if your work is dovetailing into some of the work that they're doing around this issue, they would want to be very alert and very awake to that issue too.
I maybe take your second question first and then ask Joy to comment on your first question around the experts on the health side. So communities are very much part of the board. And as I said earlier, I would like them to reflect in their anti-poverty strategy the need for access to food and have articulated that to them at the board. One of the first actions in the action plan is actually for us to look collectively across all of the departments at policy development and how food and access to food can be included in all future policy development going forward. The other thing that we're doing is working with education and health, obviously, to look at sort of, obviously, our most vulnerable, access to school meals, the uptake of school meals, the uptake of school milk, and also, working with early years organisations, even with mothers pre-pregnancy, around the importance of access to nutritious food for the developing baby, and managing those habits as they're formed, from a very, very young age. So, as I said earlier, there's a lot in this in terms of collaboration, information sharing, and really driving home that best practice that can be replicated. It's not a one-size-fits-all, unfortunately, in all of our communities. I'm well aware of that. And we do represent our views when we're talking to our devolved administrations on the development of the UK food framework as well.
And I appreciate that you're rightly concentrating there on children at school, but this takes in far
it's
wider
just a stepping
beyond
stone,
to the adult population.
We're well aware of that as well. So we're looking at this holistically from sort of end to end, very, very young children right through to the elderly in our population as well.
Okay, and then moving back to
issue.
your first question,
Yes.
as we say, central to everything that we're doing here is that collaboration and coordination piece. So we are working really strongly with our colleagues in the Department of Health, also with the Food Standards Agency, and also very much with the academics. Yes. So you might be familiar that there is a co-centre research platform. As you say, there's a co-centre. It's a sort of a collection of researchers who are looking into, in this particular instance, food systems.
I saw some mention of it in there in your documentation.
Yeah.
What can you explain a wee bit more what that involves? Who are these people, or what is involved? A couple of years ago, I think it would have been now, that the co-centres were developed, and they're partly funded by DERA, and they're sort of north, south, and a number of research institutes who are all coming together to work on key topic areas, of which, as I say, food systems is one of them. And so, as you say, as you've rightfully said there, the whole topic of ultra-processed foods is hugely topical at the moment, and there's a lot of research that's going into that. So we're tapping into that through the academics, but as I say, also through our colleagues in the Department of Health and Food Standards Agency. So it is, as we say, very much on our radar, and we will be working to see the outcomings of that. Yes.
And in particular, to say whether FSA, they would have a key role in there.
Okay, right. That's grand. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Patsy. Okay, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation this morning. I really just want to look at Mission 3, point 9, and that's the promotion of Northern Ireland food. And I see that you're looking to continue to work alongside Tourism NI and other key stakeholders to align messaging and develop plans to promote Northern Ireland's food and drink offering. And that's obviously a DFE-led project, but it's medium priority, I guess, as opposed to, and it's going to take a little bit more time to progress. And I suppose I'm disappointed because a decade ago we had going for growth strategy, and I know that there are people in this place who are death on going for growth and others who've done a complete U-turn on it. But one of the key ambitions for that programme was the establishment of a single agri-food marketing organisation, and really that was to combat, I suppose in many respects, the success or replicate the success of Board Bia and Scotland Food and Drink. And for me, I suppose I've always seen that as something which we have lacked in Northern Ireland, and I know that we have amazing companies who are doing tremendous things on a world stage, but that's nearly in spite of us. And that really worries me and concerns me, and I feel that we're missing an opportunity. And I know you have it down as a DFE-led, but it should also be in partnership, obviously, with DAERA, as it had been anticipated through the Agri-Food Strategy Board at that particular time. And I know I'm rehearsing history around all of this, but it's something that I've always felt that we have missed out on, and I'm really anxious that we don't forget about that as an aspiration. So really it's your comments with regards to that.
I suppose, yes, completely recognise the need for us to keep aligning and promoting Northern Ireland food, and that is done really strongly through the likes of Northern Ireland Food NI and NIFTA, for example, who we work quite closely with. There was the Year of Food and Drink in 2016, which was hugely successful in actually promoting food tourism, and we're still reaping the benefits of that even now. So in terms of promotion, and I know it's medium, but medium was sort of the 12 to 24 months, so it's not that far away. It's setting those foundations. How can we work with those organisations to keep promoting the benefit of food tourism in Northern Ireland? Notwithstanding that the single agri-food marketing organisation wasn't established, but there are mechanisms for us to keep that to the fore, and that's very much a focus of the Food Action Plan going forward, because we recognise the value that brings economically as well.
And I appreciate, I don't want to undervalue or diminish the work that those other organisations are doing, but I just think that branding tool would be just really important for Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and that's where we want to work closely to develop that branding for Northern Ireland. To keep that to the fore, I think we're going to have an intensive period of engagement with industry over the next 2 years in anticipation of the development of the next action plan, which might well see another potential Year of Food and Drink, who knows, but I think we just need to capitalise on the expertise and the work that is there in terms of their membership and their willingness to engage with us on the Food Action Plan. I'm not sure whether Joy or Fiona want to comment on that one as well.
Yeah, I think as well as we've had quite a lot of conversation this morning around environment and data and all of that, and I think that all plays into that promotion piece as well. So as we've said, this next 2 years is really about trying to, I suppose, hone in on. We talk about Northern Ireland as a sustainable food region, and what does that actually mean, and building that data behind it. So as we say, perhaps as we go forward, it may be something that we'll be able to look again at.
Okay. Thanks.
No, thank you, Michelle. I think sometimes they've been treated as almost mutually exclusive, but they're not, because consumers want to buy and eat something that is not only healthy but sustainable and environmentally friendly. And I think the language is changing, which I think is really good for everybody in the discussion. William?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. For me, I have farmed all my life, so I know a wee bit about the industry, but food security is going to be an issue in the coming days. You've already eggs in scarce demand right across the United Kingdom. I'm told that some supermarkets have no eggs on their shelves by lunchtime. Isn't that a danger that environmental targets could damage the industry and reduce our output, and therefore not be able to supply those markets?
I'm not aware. Northern Ireland, certainly there's not an issue with the supply of eggs. That hasn't been brought to my attention.
Eggs at the highest price ever. There's a big, strong demand for eggs at the moment.
Yeah. And the
Beef
influenza will have a...
beef prices have risen by 40% this last 6 months. So there is a demand for Northern Ireland food. Strong demand. But there is an issue in around our environmental targets. Could damage, could make us have to reduce some of those outputs. Isn't that a danger in that?
Well, that's obviously something that the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, as they go forward, will reflect on in terms of food, the balance, food production, food availability, and farming. It's not really something that.
No, I think, as you said, there's a demand for Northern Ireland food,
Yeah.
and I mean what we're trying to do is, as we've said, is to get a balance in terms of, yes, our environmental standards, but also getting the message out about the quality of our food and really promoting our good quality food.
In relation to food waste, isn't that an issue that some supermarkets encourage by selling buy two get one free? You know, I mean, there's some supermarkets encourage overbuying, I think, and that is an issue.
Yeah, and that'll be part of the conversation going forward, you know, with the supermarkets, yeah, we recognise that is an issue, and they're open and willing to have those conversations. I think the piece on the data transparency will have an influence on that, but we have started in conversations with the big supermarkets as well. But it's behavioural change, you know. It's slow. It's not something that will be achieved overnight, you know. So.
Okay.
Declan's going to come in a little bit, but I think William's last point is particularly good, because I'm a sucker for going into anywhere, whether it's Tesco's, Lidl's, or Marks and Spencer's. Usually not Marks and Spencer's because I can't afford that. But all of their, I mean, they are so strategic and tactical. I go in literally for 2 litres of milk and come out having spent 40, 50, 60, and it's not rare that you do that because the stuff is strategically placed. They have to make a profit, I get that, but I mean, we're in that consumer demand and the market and the strategic placement, particularly around young people. So do you find that they're up for a conversation?
They definitely are up for a conversation, but I mean, this is behavioural change. This is going to be slow. Our partner organisations are up for that conversation. Food Standard Agency, Department of Health. I mean, we recognise the challenges, and I'm just the same as yourself. Go in for a pint of milk and come out £50 per. Because they obviously, you know, their marketing and their strategy is very, very strong in terms of, you know, maximising how much money they're getting out of the consumer. But we really want to turn the curve around health outcomes and what is right. And if we can educate and change behaviours around what you go into the supermarket to buy, and maybe, you know, have a closer look at the labels, and is it ultra processed, is it the best option for you? But that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of education and a lot of communication and working in partnership and collaboration with everybody on the board. But we're up for the challenge.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that. And Declan, finally.
Yeah, sorry, a point I should have made earlier. I'm wondering about, I'm conscious that the majority of the food we produce here, and the milk, for example, that it's all island produced, so that there isn't like an NI milk or South of Ireland milk. It's all just milk from all of Ireland. So, given the fact that like we import a lot of our pork products here, we export a lot of sheep, for example, and indeed it's the all island grass-fed beef PGI status we have. So, given the fact that food is actually produced on an all-island basis, what level of engagement have you been having with your counterparts in the south, like Board BIA or the department down there, in terms of looking across the island, given that our food is actually mixed origin?
Yeah, no, we do have a really good relationship with our counterparts in DAFM, and we've presented to them on the food strategy. We've shared our information with them, they've shared their information with us. So yes, going forward, we do work on a fairly collaborative basis.
And you'd be kind of harmonising the strategies with what the
I
strategy.
think that's probably one of the the really exciting pieces is the both north, south, east, west. The challenges that we all face are the same. And so, you know, everybody is very much on that same journey. And the opportunity to share and learn from one another is clearly there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. You're now free to go.
Thank you for having us.
I think the Minister's looking you back at your work, but I can't give you the day off. Thank you very much. Members content?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is something we'll all be interested in and speaking into in the future. Okay. Members, we're now going to look at agenda item 7, which is an oral briefing from the NI Shows Association. Refer you to pages 153 to 189 of the pack for the report entitled The Independent Resilience Review of Agricultural Shows in Northern Ireland. We will be welcoming to brief the committee and answer questions Brian Lockhart, who is the chair of NISA, Ms Rhonda Geary, who is the Group Operations Director at NISA, and Marjorie Blackburn, NISA member. Just like to remind members, we will be in 2 weeks from now having our committee at Balmoral, and these are the fine people that will be assisting us in that venture. Okay, just take your seats there, guys. Yeah, I've already done introductions, but just as you were walking in the door, so hope you don't mind. You get yourselves comfortable there, and just so you're aware, the members have your. You okay there? You're near away for a minute. You don't lean back too much. No. Some of the chairs are quite stiff backed, and some of them are set, and you just have to be careful which one you get.
You can tap that side.
Okay, there's a wee bar at the side underneath there. If you tap it in, it'll stop it from going back, I think.
I think it'll be all right.
I don't want Francis to be
The other side. No, that's the same one. It is that one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen. Thank you very much. So that, just so you know, the members have your in their packs. They have the report and review that was done in 2022, and they've had a chance to look at it. But this is your chance now to present and offer a briefing to the committee members. And at the end of that, then, if the members have any questions, then we'll go through a series of questions and answers. So I just invite you to brief the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Will this come up automatically if I... Here we go. I can get it open. There we are. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you. Rhonda Geary, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm the Honorary Secretary Treasurer of the Northern Ireland Shows Association. I suppose just maybe start and set the scene very briefly. The Northern Ireland Shows Association is an organisation that was formed back in 1983, and 42 years later we're still going strong. We have 14 Show Society members, running 16 shows per year between the months of May and August. Mostly one-day shows, obviously with the exception of the like of Balmoral Show. I suppose the main objective of our organisation is to encourage cooperation between the agricultural shows and like-minded organisations, and it's a platform for us to share topics of interest. Agricultural shows, as I'm sure you all are very aware, are very important both culturally and economically. And many of these show societies have been running their shows for many centuries and are very deeply rooted within their areas. The involvement of the youth is very important at our shows with the YFCU. Economically, we're very important for the local producers, for the contribution that we make to tourism and hospitality, the excellent business opportunities that we offer for local businesses to network in their areas, and the social aspect of the event as well, where we're bringing together the rural families and communities. And then educationally, as we're educating the public on the farming practices and really showcasing our excellence. Just a rough idea of where we are. We're all over Northern Ireland with our shows. And I think the full list there of the various show dates.
running from May until the end of December in terms of the Balmoral Show events. So why we're here today is to discuss the independent resilience review of agricultural shows in Northern Ireland, and I'll pass over to Brian, who's going to take you through that.
Look, thank you very much for allowing us to come here today. It's very much appreciated. I'm the current Northern Ireland Shows Association chairman. It's a post that rotates through the various shows. I'm also chairman of Newry Agricultural Society, and that particular show, as an example, has been running from 1869, and I can trace my family back to 1869, so it's deep rooted within my family and many families like me. The Aled Rees Jones report was commissioned, as Rhonda says, by Minister Poots, and it was completed in August 2022, and probably has been sitting on a shelf for most of the time till now. The key benefits in Aled Jones's report, which we believe as a Northern Ireland Shows Association to be very fair and balanced, it brings rural and urban dwellers together. It's central to the fabric of the rural dwellers. It shows best practices in agri and food. It communicates, it educates various communities. We promote health and well-being. As a matter of fact, the Deira Farm health checks, people come and get screened in an environment which allows them to enter more easily. Family fun days. All the shows, there's over 250,000 visitors with over 1,300 volunteers. There's 8 key recommendations in the report, but they're all built around resilience of shows in line with Deira's strategic objectives. So we want to work with Deira, we want to educate, communicate those things to the people that come to our shows. This picture here actually paints 1,000 words. You know what's going on here. There's animals best of class, there's judging, there's exhibitors in the background, there's thousands of people all having their own discussions, talking, educating, communicating. As an example of support to our nearest neighbours, which is the Republic of Ireland, Rhonda will throw the... So the TDs, the government, the department in Dublin supports the Irish shows, of which is 123 agri shows in Republic of Ireland, €1 million. And each show receives a grant of between 6,000 and 11,000. That's just depending on the size of the show. So that's an example of how the Southern government values and supports their shows. And in fact, that's not at all, because there's 56,500 has just been announced to do best of class and breeding heifers and stuff. So, yeah, from the Department of Agriculture. So look, I have just 3 key questions. Have you read the report? Importantly for us, do you agree with the report? And if you do agree with the report, we're not here to bash heads, we're here to work constructively with people. In my own agriculture society, we're cross-community, and we work brilliant together. But how do we collectively, and this is where I'm asking for your advice and help, implement the report recommendations and findings? How do we go about doing that if we believe that shows and the communities they help is important? So we want to create a good news story where all the MLAs, the Agricultural Select Committee, the Minister and his team all come together and say something positive, which we believe we do. And at that, I'll hand over to Marjorie here.
Hello. Marjorie Blackburn is my name. And I'm the chair of the northern region of the ISA, which is the Irish Shows Association. And the shows in the north are also, a lot of them are ISA members. And again, we're all speaking with the one voice. We all looking sponsorship, money, preferably to come through the government and stuff. And when it's all a work together, there's nobody there and there and there. We all come together. And I would just like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their time, for seeing us here today. And we really do appreciate it. And any help we can get in any form for our shows would be just fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Are you happy enough to, we're going to sort of move to questions from members if that's okay. So thank you for your time today. Thanks for your request to come in. It is, I'm sure each member will speak for themselves, but I've been to a number of the shows. I look forward. I've already got quite a few of them peppered into my diary. And I think the reason that I would be quite excited about this is that this hits a number of this committee's priorities. So not only do we look after the agricultural part of it, but we're also into rural affairs and rural support. And I think you've made the case very well in regard to what this actually does in terms of that rural interaction, because this extends out beyond our farming families into where we live and all of those businesses and very importantly the societal links that does that. And when you go to the shows, obviously it's evidenced in spades when you see people moving about and doing the things that they do. But we're here really to talk about this review and then where that's impacted or not with the department and how we can maybe tease that out a bit further. So some of the questions will be more centred in around this, but members will bring their own questions to you if that's okay. So I'm going to ask them a first question in regard to recommendation number 1, which was for, the recommendation was for a new multi-year programme of funding and support for agricultural shows. It would seem that the outcome of the economic impact assessment at recommendation 6 would potentially go a long way to providing the evidence needed to support a funding programme. But are you aware of any work that has been done in that regard, as it would seem to offer a priority to support the case for DAERA to further support this? So has there been any feedback from DAERA in regard to a willingness to look at those parts of it to perhaps move back into a funding cycle?
So over the last, since 2022, a number of organisations, probably led more with the Irish Shows Association through the Northern region, has had meetings with the Minister and his team. So Marjorie, you can explain.
Yeah, we met with the Minister, Minister Muir last year. The ISA Secretary and the Northern Region members. And we give Minister Muir a copy of the recommendation, but really numerous emails later we have received nothing back.
Okay. So committee, this is really why we wanted to try and see if we could get to MLAs, this committee, to see if there was a willingness for supporting shows.
So there was previously funding, wasn't there, years ago?
Bounce back.
Yeah.
So on the bounce back, we didn't start back in Newry and Saintfield, I think, didn't start back because we were still unsure. There was variants of COVID floating about. Yeah. We're a small show, so within the range of the shows, there's bigger shows and smaller shows. We're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid in our organisation. And we didn't want to take a chance of committing to expenditure of money and then another COVID variant coming up. So we didn't run a show that year. I asked then our first show back in 2023, could we avail of the bounce back? No. So it was only for that particular year. And some shows did avail of that.
Okay. And do you think then the shows in Northern Ireland are at a bit of a disadvantage then, probably from your perspective, Marjorie, in terms of obviously what needs to be done for any department or any minister to administer public money is the benefit, the cost benefit analysis and the output, which I think is pretty well captured within the document. But looking at the disparity between the Republic and ourselves, then how does that manifest in terms of the shows themselves? And is there a danger then that we potentially lose?
Well, if we take the example of Fermanagh show, there's a prime example of a show that has hopefully going to get going at some stage, but it really, you could say, has fallen off because of lack of funding. Newry Show, which is a great great day out, is a small show, and I mean, you were in danger.
Yeah.
A few of the other shows are smaller and are in danger of folding if they don't get support.
Since COVID, Chairman and members, the inflationary pressures that have occurred since then, like to give you an example, our insurance has gone like from 700 to 1,500.
That's that one,
To have ambulances on site are anywhere between £600 and £2,500. So, you know, just the inflationary pressures is so enormous. Never mind, you know, volunteers and time and effort. And the other thing is legislation, health and safety. There's always new things that you have to do. You have to train people and stuff. All those are resources that have to be financed. So yes, there is a danger, a very big danger, and Fermanagh didn't run last year. We have struggled, but we'll just try and soldier on. But you asked a question about the South. Well, like, that's such a big leg up, and such, from their government, a respect to those communities that they appreciate the value of what they do.
I would say there's a huge missed opportunity as we move into what potentially is a more difficult phase for agriculture and farming in the near future if we don't have these outlets, because there's a great social good. My final question then isn't so much, don't kick me for this isn't necessarily in regard to the funding piece, because I do actually see the value in this and would love to be able to work collaboratively and collegiately with the Minister if it can be exercised. But there's also the world changes, and there's a piece in the document which talks about looking for greater collaboration between shows in terms of long-term resilience. So in that extent, would there be some look in the longer term to reassess the shows, maybe for mergers and that type of things, to look for efficiencies and improvements as well? Or
look, I think more from the Northern Ireland Shows Association, from our organisation's point of view, it would be more about the shows working together, maybe in terms of sharing equipment, that type of thing. You know, if we had funding to even purchase things that all of the shows could use, that would reduce the costs across the board. But as our sort of head organisation of that, but. I mean, as I said before, the shows, some of them, you know, they date back so long, they've all got their deep history, and they'd all want to have their part in their local area. So in terms of merging, I can't really see that happening, because they all very much stand alone, but work together at the same time, because the same exhibitors, the same helpers, the same volunteers, they're all, you know, part of their local areas.
Just my final, sorry, go ahead.
So Mr. Chairman and members, a lot of the shows do work together, and volunteers cross from one show to another to help out. We as shows want to participate and want to help the DAERA meet their strategic objectives. Sustainability comes into it, environmental issues. We in Newry Show have already got 3 or 4 new sponsors, all from that sustainable side of the equation, environmental. And as shows, we're very willing to communicate and educate people that come to our shows about the strategic objectives of DAERA. We want to work. Look, we've worked from 1869 in our own show. And going back then, coming off the back of famines and stuff, people wanted to learn how to best practice agriculture, how to feed themselves, how not to be reliant on one particular crop, how to show best husbandry, you know what I mean? So we have adopted and changed over this last 150 years, which is a very long, and we're willing to adopt again. Just give us a bit of a leg up and we'll work with you. And we'll take advice and we'll take direction. So we're willing to work.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, Declan?
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation and for being here today. And a lot of what you're saying I can completely identify with. I do frequently attend the OMO show, for example, which is my local show, and it is a great family day out. Obviously, I'll be at the Balmoral every year as well, on virtually every day of it, and I do see the social benefits of bringing rural and urban together and breaking down those barriers, and and also the educational benefits, and we just have to have a briefing on food security, you know, so I can see how it feeds into that strategy as well. So I suppose I think that one of the things in your recommendations, or one of the recommendations, is to look at economic impact assessment. I think that I would imagine that that what you deliver in terms of economic value is absolutely huge, as well as the social value, and even as a platform for small businesses and cottage industries to get that platform to come and benefit from having that platform. And I think that you know, even if you look at what's been provided in the south, it's in the broader scheme of things, it's not a pile of money, but it would make a big difference to what you do. You know, so Chair, you know, just all I can just say is that, you know, certainly I'd like to, through the committee, to continue to work with you to see how you could be supported, because I do think that there is you're probably almost underselling yourselves, if you know what I mean. Like if you had a better assessment of what the wider economic benefit is, you know. So that would be my view anyway. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. One of the reasons, because we're so many volunteers and people aren't being paid, you have to bring in professional advice, accountants, whatever, to do any economic assessments and stuff, and the resources aren't there on many occasions, you know. Thank you.
John?
Thanks, Chair, and I want to thank the panel as well for the information. Look, we know as a starting point, these events are always a great day out. The queues at the gate prove that. In addition, there's certainly a benefit to the local economy and the rural economy. And therefore, in terms of the relatively small sums of money, as Declan said, that we're talking about, I think the committee can have a conversation about this and try to make progress. However, I'm also keen that every level of government should be involved in these events, and local councils. I noticed, and I know the committee cannot control this, or maybe not even influence any great, but I'm keen to know, do councils engage, for example, whether I think you say here in your report is between 1,000 and 15,000 that they're likely to contribute. Do they actually attend on the day? I think this is a great opportunity for councils to showcase what they do in that area. Secondly, DAERA also, this is an opportunity to engage with the sector, but also engage with the wider public, something I think government needs to do more of and needs to do better. And then finally, would you be prepared, if you're not doing this already, and you may be, in terms of council support and government support, would you be willing to work at the shows to try and encourage people to also shop in the local towns on the day they're at the show? This is something I've dealt with in the past with the Antrim show as a councillor before I came here. Very happy to support, but I did think there was more, and there were a number of country shows and other things held there. I did think there was more could be done to encourage people to stop in the local town on their way there or their way home. And I think there's a piece of work to be done. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would say that the councils do support some of the shows, more so than others, and maybe some of the shows do lack their council support because it's going to one or two shows.
Okay.
Yeah, that has been proved. Yeah.
So again, just on councils, every council region has a different way of operating in terms of supporting community organisations. So I can speak with knowledge of Newry and Mourne, who have been brilliant with us. Now, having said that, it's an online portal, and you're scored against the application questions. So there's a scoring process. So if you don't hit the right score in each question and the overall score in total, then you don't get supported. And again, it's really time consuming and to do it, if any of us have done it, and sometimes you can be knocked back, and so it's a bit of a waste of time, although you go through the process and you learn something. So in Newry show, for example, the last couple of years through that process we have been supported. And I just recently heard that Castlewellan show had been supported. And again, but some councils don't do that and don't support. So it becomes like a non-level playing field, you know, for some people.
And the piece about working with local businesses and local retailers and hospitality, whoever it might be, would you agree there's some work can be done there if it's not happening already? I think it doesn't happen to a great extent.
Yeah, I want to say, from Balmoral Show's point of view, it's something that we do locally with local businesses,
Yeah.
but it is something that, in local areas, it is only the one day, usually a Saturday, and that's where you probably don't get local council staff, for example, being at the event. At our show being a weekday show, we would have more council support in terms of them being there on site.
Well, Clougher Valley is my show, and we're a midweek show, so we would get. We're lucky to get council funding for the event, the pre-show event, and we're blessed to get that. And any of the local businesses we try and support with bringing judges and keeping them, and the local market, the lady who does the canteen there, supports the show by providing the food for the judges and so on. And all our outside caterers then come in to do the general public food.
Thank you.
Good, John. William?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and can I thank you for your presentation coming around. I think country people like shows. I mean, it's a big day out. I attend the local Armagh show in Balmoral every year. I was looking there. The Republic of Ireland supports their shows by almost £1 million, which is roughly 6,000 per show. If Northern Ireland done the same, only 16 shows and an average of 6,000 is £96,000. It's a relatively small amount of money in government terms.
Yes, but the shows.
But it would make a real difference.
It would make a real difference with quite a few of the shows. I'd be delighted to get, and more. But,
I see the Welsh government supports their shows.
Yes.
But with Scotland and the mainland, do you know, do they support their shows?
Yes, Scotland do. Scotland do support their local shows.
Probably we're the only region in the UK that
Absolutely are, yeah.
We're the only region in these islands that don't.
UK and Ireland.
Yeah.
For one, I think the committee here will want to support you. I think it's the least we could do is give you full support. I mean, as you said earlier, all these are volunteers. There's a lot of work goes into it. And the organising of this year's show started immediately after last year's show.
Absolutely.
So it's a full year organisation. So I would give you full support.
Well, thank you very much. And one thing that none of us can control is the weather.
Yes.
So we're very dependent on having good days. If we have a bad day, so if it starts out wet in the morning and people decide not to go to the show, that automatically puts us under pressure in terms of finances, because we are relying on each show's year to bring in enough money to pay the people that we've committed to. So, you're always on a bit of a knife edge as well. So you have a pressure there as well. And then if it is wet and then you're struggling, then you're really under pressure for the following year's show.
Plus, to cancel, 2 years ago we had to cancel our horse events at Clougher Valley Show, and it costs almost as much to cancel as it does to run.
Yeah.
And people don't see that background cost. You think because something was cancelled that there's no cost involved, but it's a mighty cost.
Well, thank you for your comments.
Yes.
Michelle?
Thank you, Chair, and I'm probably going to repeat comments from my colleague here, but again, thank you for your presentation this morning. I have asked a number of questions in relation to this over the last year, but I suppose agriculture is our largest industry in Northern Ireland, and the shows celebrate and showcase that. I've been to all the shows. I've been to them, with the exception of Newry. I've been to all the shows.
Why, Michelle? Why?
Well, something, I might just put that in my diary for this year.
Get you a special invitation.
So I have been to them all, with the exception of yourself. So I have an interest in that. But obviously, ministers love the shows. Because it also showcases the minister, and the ministers love to get their photographs taken, and I know that because I was there for a season. And it is a great opportunity to meet with stakeholders and to get a real sense of what's going on as well. So, I mean, I was surprised whenever I asked the question for last year how much each of the individual shows received, and like the Newry show itself only received £60. Now, £60 compared to what's being offered in the Irish Republic, it's really nothing short of insulting.
So the £60 actually, so we put out applications for craft for businesses, exhibitors. That was the fee that we charge that any exhibitor to come along and park up and provide space, etc. for. So that wasn't £60. That was £60, and they brought their caravan and displayed their Department of Agriculture literature and stuff. So again, we need to. Sometimes there's a wee spin on things, and
So that's a little bit disingenuous, and I know that you obviously have to be careful with within your presentation today, because you do want to work in partnership and cooperation with.
We're not here to bash heads. We want to work together,
and I appreciate that. But whenever you actually look at the facts themselves are insulting, given the work that you do and the amount of effort that's placed. And
sorry, just on that point. So, for example, department come to Balmoral show. So that total cost of taking that whole hall maybe shows in some of their figures, but that's a cost. That's not a grant towards Balmoral show.
Well, I asked the question about the winter fair, and there's no money goes to the winter fair. But interestingly, I also asked for the minister to give sort of an update on the evaluation of the recommendations, and he did actually say that he had met with yourselves on the 1st of July. And what's interesting after that, he said, and advised them that any future financial support would be within the context of rural development, future rural policy interventions. Now, that's sort of civil service speak, but did he explain what that actually meant?
Yes, we did try. We did try going down the communities route and so on, with no response. We met a blank. And Jim Harrison is the ISA secretary, and we had the chair of the Northern Ireland shows, Michelle, last year, and we haven't got anything or anywhere.
One of the recommendations is where stakeholders would work together. So the Irish Shows Association working with the Northern Ireland Shows Association, working with young farmers. We're doing all that. We're trying to do all that. We'll do more of it. But when you hit a brick wall, what do you do? So that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Michelle, Patsy.
Thanks very much for your presentation, and importantly too, thank you for your work, all the efforts that you put in around these shows. Could you clarify, have you met with the department about this report, and were you anticipating feedback from the department?
Yes, we were anticipating feedback, and we didn't get. We gave Minister Weir a copy of that last year, and he said he would take it and read it and return with a reply, but we haven't got it.
You never got anything?
No.
Nothing?
No, Jim sent a letter later last year, and we haven't got any response from that. Jim sent an email to the Communities Department. We didn't get anything back from that. And it's just, I mean, when you consider that £1 million in the south, that comes from communities, and then that other grant, there's £56,500 sponsored show classes by the Department of Agriculture in the south. So that's two different departments given a lot of money.
Chair, if I could make the recommendation, aside from good manners and efficiency and all that people deserve a response, be it good, bad, and different response. I know I, like William, would want to be supportive of the presentation that's been made here for funding for the shows because of the contribution that they make to our rural communities. But I think, and possibly if I could make the suggestion as well, that a similar type letter be referred through to via the usual process through the Communities Committee in a similar vein, because people, well, you deserve a response aside from anything else, but and hopefully
So,
positive
again,
response.
Mr. Chairman and member, we are where we are, and I don't want to go back and cause divisions or ill feeling or anything if people haven't sent an email or whatever. We're here today, and I just want to move forward rather than look backwards. I know it's important.
I get that, but this is supposed to be accountable, responsible government.
Yes.
And responsible government is with the communities we serve, and that's my point. And you've made a good case here today, and an important case, but an element of that case is how people are dealt with, and people should be dealt with in a respectful manner, and that's my point in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Yeah, no, thank you. This committee has written previously to the department, as you know, in regards to trying to support funding applications, for instance, for angling. I think it was maybe in and around Fermanagh. So it's not unusual for us to do that, so don't worry about that there. We do rub noses with each other and press buttons at times, but we're all probably heading in the same direction. And I know, subsequent to another question and query that a member put in about a year ago, the department minister did come back and say that they would consider funding for agricultural shows in the 24-25 year. If they did, they obviously deemed not to do that. So there must have been some mechanism in there where they have assessed it. But we'll ask them, obviously, off the back of today. I imagine at the end of this we'll wrap it up to maybe go back to them in regard to that. So thanks, Patsy. And then Declan, you wanted to come in with another one, yes?
I should have said at the start. I'm just thinking on the economic benefits of it, and the fact that you're benefiting probably many small businesses at the show, and as John says, if we could broaden it out to the local area, it might also be useful, not as well as, but in addition to DAERA, maybe contacting the Department of Economy as well to see is there some assistance there they could give around the economic impact assessment or whatever, given the fact that this is a platform for small businesses. And I will say in addition to, not instead of DAERA, so it'd be worthwhile looking at contacting the Department of Economy as well.
And who's the minister?
Keith Archibald.
Yes, we did contact her.
And there's no response yet?
No.
Right, okay. So it's,
Okay. Members,
we add that to the list.
We're going to give them all a wrap for you. No, thank you very much for your presentation and your time today. You look surprised, Brian. You look relieved, actually. I've just said that, so it's
well, none of us are used to this grandeur, history. So it is difficult for volunteers.
Yeah.
Like economic appraisals, all these things, if we had helped to do some of that and present our case in a more maybe professional manner, well then
I think you're doing
maybe we'd be taking more notice of. I don't know.
You're doing okay. One of the things I would say is that just about every council has a facility, and if they're not giving you money, to have a facility for helping with applications, possibly not just strictly within their own council areas. I think that's incumbent on them actually to assist organisations like yourselves, and particularly the smaller show, because you're set up particularly around Balmoral. There's a lot of learning that you've achieved through that. I mean, it's a standout event. I mean, it's world class. It really is, and it's recognised as that. And a lot of the smaller shows are similarly, they feed in, feed out from it. So I think you have a lot to take pride in. One of the things that we do is a Northern Irish colloquialism. We don't appreciate how good we do stuff. We don't record it, we don't capture it, and then we don't promote it. And that's something. Hopefully, that's another thing that perhaps we can help you with in the future. But in the first instance, I'm sure, I think I've collectively from the members, I'm not gaining anybody that doesn't want to assist you in this, and we will be writing out to the Department of Agriculture in particular, the Department of Communities, but also the SOLAS, who obviously coordinate a little piece in and around the local councils, if you're minded, and we'll keep in contact with you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
At the show.
Can I just say that just some of this ISA, all the local shows would have qualifiers, be it horse, cattle or sheep, where the people can take their livestock down south to participate in All Ireland. And we've had young stock person, and we've been extremely lucky with our northern. We've had 4 young people from the north has taken an All Ireland championship. Now, granted, they do not get taken their own livestock down there. They have to borrow livestock to compete in the south, because with the cattle movements and that, they can't take their own. So I think it's a magnificent platform. And I mean, our young people have to be applauded, and our local shows have to be applauded for providing the qualifiers for that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And this is very important as well. I know I've said most of it, but Rhonda here, who doesn't want to blow her own trumpet, but she runs Balmoral Show. So we have a ready-made mechanism of being able to run a blue ribbon event, handle money, auditors. So if it's a question of how to channel money through to us, there's an organisation there already there that has all that behind it, you know. So I think that's important. But listen, thank you so much for allowing us to come here today and present our case. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much to
Thank you.
the committee.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair, can I just
Yes,
quickly
Clerk
summarise?
will summarise so that everybody's happy and we know exactly what we're doing, so we don't miss anything.
So there'll be a sort of same or similar letter going to DAERA, the ministers, DAERA, DFC and Economy. Just really asking them to consider in detail the report that we've talked about today, and to reply to the organisation and copy us in on that. And also then we'll do a separate letter to Solus, particularly around the funding piece and the differentials there.
Just in relation to the letter to Economy, given the presentation which we received previously, particularly around the promotion of Northern Ireland food and produce and so on, I think it would be useful for me to put it into that context, because clearly that's the lead
framework.
that Economy have, and this is exactly what the shows do.
Yeah, we'll mention that in the letter then,
Members content? Members, I'm going to, if you're content with that, I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break, because when we come back we're going to be looking at the agriculture bill, the deliberations informal clause by clause. Okay, thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Agenda item 8, the Agriculture Bill, Committee deliberations and formal clause by clause. Members, we have essentially completed our deliberations on the bill, and today we will run through our informal, and that is informal clause by clause. This allows all members to state for the record their position on each clause or ask any last questions of the officials before stating their position. Next week we will do the formal clause by clause. There is no opportunity for discussion or making further points at that stage, as it is a formal process of each clause being read out and the committee recording consensus or otherwise on its position on each clause. So there'll be no discussion next week. That's when we'll be finalising the paper. So, members, a copy of the last committee deliberation table can be found at pages 203 of the pack. A copy of the bill and a copy of the explanatory memorandum starts at page 191 of the pack. Members, a copy of the response dated the 9th of April from the Department to our request for clarification on a number of matters within the clauses can be found at starting at page 217 of the pack, and we considered that response at our last meeting. Members, I also refer you to a recent memo at page 216 of the pack received from the clerk to the Committee for the Executive Office in response to our letter to all statutory committees, stating that the provisions of the Agriculture Bill have no direct impact on the functions of TEO. Members, I also refer you to page 21 of the table papers to recent correspondence from NIMGA. Northway Mushroom stated at our meeting on the 3rd of April that the substrate yard had been sold to Sawgrass Substrate Limited in August 2024. Members, NIMGA would like to clarify that this new company is not a PO and is not a member of NIMGA, and the site does not produce mushrooms and therefore does not participate in the fruit and vegetable aid scheme. So, members, I have pleasure in welcoming again the officials, John Terrington and Elaine McCrory, to the meeting. You're very welcome. And members, I'm going to go through each clause one at a time and state what it does and summarise the position as at our last meeting on the 10th of April. I will then ask members to pose any last questions you may have to the officials. I will then wrap up each clause by requesting that each member informally states their position, and so we know where we are for next week's formal clause by clause. Okay, members? So, clause 1 is the Aid in the Fruit and Vegetable Sector Amendment of CMO Regulations. Clause 1 amends Assimilated Law EU 1308-2013, the CMO Regulations, in relation to the FEAS to remove any requirement for all eligible claims to be funded and enable the Department to continue the FEAS on a discretionary basis. It also includes transitional provisions for existing FEAS programmes. At our last meeting, we considered the response from the Department, stating that the Minister was not minded to amend Clause 1 as we had requested for a number of reasons. Those were that he has already provided assurance that he will not end the existing scheme until there is a suitable successor in place, and the policy aim of the bill to make support discretionary. It stated that if 4.1% of VMP baseline was included on the face of the bill, further primary legislation would then be needed to amend that, and an alternative to the VMP calculation may be more attractive to other sub-sectors. There then followed a question and answer session in Clause 1, and the committee heard that the 4.1% VMP was a cap on the original EU scheme and not a baseline, and that there is concern that the closure of the scheme in England with POs with the majority of their growers based there could potentially set up their HQ here, resulting in fruit and veg aid benefiting growers in other jurisdictions. Members, do you have any further questions on Clause 1, bearing in mind what we have heard from the mushroom sector, the assurances from the Minister regarding the extension of the FES and the development of a new scheme in co-design with the sector? Are there any other questions or clarity that needs to be sought in regard to that? Michelle?
I'm conscious of what has been said by the Minister in the correspondence with regards to an assurance that he won't end the existing scheme until there's a suitable successor in place. However, that is only his word for it. So I suppose that I'm still a little bit nervous around that because it's not on the face of a bill as such.
I think that the first instance is that, and we've made this clear, if a application comes this year, it would be for a 3-year programme. So there's, without any debate on the face of the legislation, there's a commitment there. My thinking is that 3 years, after that 3 years, he's given his commitment, and if there's nothing else there, I would imagine it would run, but we'd be into another mandate. So I guess it would be impossible to say what would happen then. What I have to say is that the power, the discretionary power, doesn't close the scheme. The only way they close the scheme is by using the powers in clause 2. Clause 2. The scheme would still be there. A future minister could decide not to fund an individual application, and that is likely to happen because it busts the bank in some way.
I suppose this legislation closes the scheme ultimately. You're saying there's an assurance there by the minister that the scheme won't be closed until a suitable scheme is co-designed.
The legislation
doesn't close the scheme.
Doesn't clean the scheme.
The bill purely makes the aid discretionary. That clause 1 purely makes the aid discretionary.
If I can refer back to the Agricultural Act 2020, the UK-wide or the DEFRA Act, when they took equivalent powers, the powers are called powers to amend with the aim of closing or thereabouts. That was a policy direction. There is no policy direction set in this whatsoever in how the bill is drafted, and certainly no closure of the scheme by nature of by the bill.
Okay. If this legislation wasn't being drafted, or wasn't before us today, or if this committee decided that we weren't going to support the progress of this legislation, what difference would it make?
2 things. The first thing is the scheme would continue as is. Accept that with the same rules. It would, as the chair has said, run considerable risk that the earmarked funding for the executive earmarked funding for agriculture, fisheries, agri-environment, rural affairs could be used for the benefit of non-Northern Ireland growers. And ultimately, it could, if other POs came on the scene, it could lead to a pretty sizable increase in the budget requirement for this sector at the potential impact on other sectors or on the budget more generally. I think secondly, and quite importantly, is it would also mean there would be no scope to change the scheme, and you will have heard from stakeholders calls for changes that would align with their nearest competitors due to changes that happened in the EU since Brexit. So there are a number of changes that wouldn't happen, leaving them at a continuing competitive disadvantage for the period of the 3 years of their first programme, or until such times as there was further legislation to provide us the powers to make those changes. So it's two pronged in terms of the 2 things that the bill does.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other members, anything that they want to seek clarity on? No? Okay, I'm going to bring clause 1.
Sorry.
Yep.
You're going to do it. Sorry. I'm a bit too quick.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring it to conclusion until we get a chance to state our positions in clause 1. So I'm going to request that members state their positions in clause 1, and this is your opportunity to have on the record your summarised position on this clause. not any major issue in terms of where we start. I'm going to start in a anti-clockwise position, if that's okay, from the top of the table. Patsy, have you a position on clause 1?
Well, reservations about it and what the implications of it could be, but it seems that we, to use that terrible phrase, we are where we are.
Okay. John?
Content.
I think we'll currently withhold support from clause 1. Currently withhold support for clause 1.
Okay. William?
I have some concerns about it too. Currently, probably withhold support too.
Yep. Okay. My own perspective is I see the risk in both. I see the risk in not doing it because it leaves it open potentially to abuse from states and operators in England maybe setting up their HQ here. I also see some risks, Michelle's position in terms of the assurance of the Minister in terms of keeping it open. So it's a mixture of responses. So you've got a support from John and then reserved response from the other members at this point.
No, Declan, you didn't.
Sorry?
Chair, did Declan, did you support the
Withhold
clause 1?
support,
No, withholding support.
Withhold support. Okay.
Just to be clear, then the formal clause is next week.
Next week.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
next-
trying to get a view.
Yeah. So next week is there's no discussion. Next week is do you support or do you not? And it's not a reserved or holding. It's support or not next week, and then there's okay.
That's the final next week.
Okay. It's just that let members know there's no further discussion, no further questions. This is the time. Okay. So unless there's no further questions for the officials in regard to clause 1, I will then bring clause 1 to a conclusion. Happy enough, clerk? Okay. Clause 2, which is aid in the fruit and vegetable sector, part of modify. Remember, subsection 1 confers a power on DAERA to make regulations to modify the list of assimilated direct legislation relating to aid in the fruit and vegetable sector. Subsection 2 provides power to make regulations regarding the review of decisions relating to such aid. It will allow provisions to be made for review procedures, enabling remuneration allowances to be paid in connection with the procedures. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Clerk. It will allow provisions to be made for review procedures, enabling remuneration allowances to be paid in connection with the procedures and allowing fees to be charged in respect of the cost of the procedures. Subsection 3 clarifies that the part of modify and subsection 1 includes part of modified provisions inserted in the CMO regulations by clause 1. Members, we have sought further clarity regarding the breadth of delegated legislative powers, how DAERA intends to use them, and its intentions in relation to revocation or repeal of the assimilated legislation. We considered the response at our last meeting, which stated in summary that the enabling power in the bill could allow for changes to improve the existing scheme. No decision has been made on how these powers will be used until a successor scheme is advanced and it is not possible to be definitive, and that the powers to provide for repeal revocation of parts of existing legislation if such parts are considered unsuitable for a Northern Ireland only scheme. Regarding a successful application for the extension of the current FEAS, the response stated that if a PO submits a suitable 3-year programme, the Department would be expected to match fund eligible expenditure incurred for the full 3 years up to the approved maximum funding, and that business decisions made by the PO itself would also have a bearing on the level and duration of the funding. So members, do you have any further questions on clause 2?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, apologies to cut across. You made a comment amongst that the use of these powers would only be when a replacement is has been co-designed. I think the Minister said it in his statement here just before Easter on introducing the corporate plan. The powers would give the opportunity to do incremental changes in advance of that or as part of that to improve the scheme. And if the powers were available now, I think certainly we would be discussing with stakeholders and coming to yourselves with proposals to improve the scheme. We've said all along it's a EU scheme. We may not have the time to do everything we'd want to do, but there may be scope to make those alignments that I mentioned in the previous, or to do other things that may improve the administration of it. Again, administration being a EU scheme, we might like to stream that for if the department's taking on that role from the end of the year. So there may be incremental, there could well be incremental changes well in advance of any replacement using those powers.
Okay. Thank you for the update on that. Members, are there any further questions or clarification that you need in regard to Clause 2? Just before I move on to that, my mistake, we do have Aoife online too, so I'll just be making sure that I include Aoife in any further any points. Okay, so I'm going to put, I have no further questions, no further clarification. Then I'm going to request that members state their position on Clause 2. This is your opportunity to have on the record your summarised position on this clause. Start in the same position, if that's okay. I hope you don't feel put upon, Patsy. Have you any position on Clause 2? No. Patsy? No. You nothing to raise on that? Content with Clause 2?
In particular.
Okay, John?
Content.
Okay. Declan?
It's Clause 1 is the
the sticky one.
It's the sticky one.
William?
Some concerns again. Not prepared to support at this stage.
Okay. Shell?
Yeah, I'll just reserve at this stage.
Are we Aoife online? Is Aoife? Okay. A little bit of a screen change there, no? Okay. So there's support from John.
John Declan, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I have no particular issue with Clause 2. To be fair, Clause 1 is the sticky one for me. Clause 2 I have no particular issue with. Okay. Members, Clause 3, information provision promotion measures, power to modify. This clause confers a power on DAERA to make regulations to modify the listed assimilated direct legislation relating to information provision and promotion measures. Members, we sought clarification in relation to limitations of the powers and future intentions to revoke or repeal the assimilated legislation. The response stated that the powers will save the law from sunsetting. It may be a useful foundation for support for food promotion and could be used to revoke any part deemed unhelpful to a Northern Ireland only call for applications, or to revoke the legislation in its entirety if it's decided that it's no longer needed. Before I invite any other questions, is there anything, John or Elaine, that you want to add to that?
Just again, a small piece of clarification that the bill doesn't save it from sunset. That's back to the retained EU law.
Same as the last one.
Yeah, where it was revoked everywhere else, sunsetted everywhere else in the UK, and we kept it here to provide the possibility of it being used as amended by these powers. I would definitely don't think we could use it now without these powers. I think it would be far too cumbersome as a Northern Ireland only without doubt. But the powers are frozen in time from after the EU, where they were revoked everywhere else in the UK. But because there had been use of it here, and in the absence of an assembly at the time, we still have the powers. The powers. We just don't have the power to do anything with them until we have the bill.
Okay. Have any of the members any points of clarity they wish to get? Any more information required? No. Okay. So on Clause 3, I'll go this way this time, so we're not picking on Patsy all the time. I now request that members state their position on Clause 3. This is your opportunity to have on the record your summarised position on this clause. William?
I still have some concerns, so I reserve the right to look at this in the future. Yeah.
And Michelle?
Just leave it until next week. If that's
okay. Declan?
Same as the last time. It's just, Clause 1's a sticky one. So it's,
yeah. John?
Content.
Patsy?
Same as before.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, for the record, Clause 3. Yeah, Aoife, are you able to indicate? Okay.
Not to worry.
Right, and myself again, no issues with clause 3. Clause 1 for me still the issue. Okay, clause 4 is the regulations. Subsections 1 and 2 cover that this clause provides that regulation made under the bill may contain supplementary, incidental, consequential, transitional, transitory or saving provisions, and that such provision includes modification of any statutory provision. Subsection 3 provides the regulations under the bill can only be made following approval by the Assembly. We sought further clarification how the Department intends to use these broad powers. Members, the response stated that it is not possible to be definitive as to what changes might be proposed or what impacts that may in turn have or this might have on other legislation until the future policy position is clear. The Department also states the powers in clauses 2 and 3 are narrow as they only allow changes to the named legislation, and therefore any consequential etc. amendments will also be very narrow and will be subject to draft affirmative regulations. And the members want to seek any further clarification, and before we do that, John and Elaine, is there anything you want to add to that one?
I think so.
No, it's more straightforward, I think. Everybody happy enough? Okay. William, again, are you content with clause 4, or you want to reserve? Reserve. Michelle? Declan?
Isn't this clause here? Doesn't this clause here also make it that it's a requirement of the Assembly to approve? Yeah.
Any regulations made under it, including any consequential, transitional, etc.
I'm okay, Chair.
Thank you. John?
Content on the basis that any changes would have to come before the Assembly.
Same here.
Yeah, okay. Aoife? For the record, that's an important clause, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Clause 5 then, interpretation. This clause provides interpretation of terms used in the bill, including that, importantly, modify means, and that includes amend, repeal or revoke. Members, we sought further clarification and clarity from the Department under what circumstances it would intend to use these powers. Members, the response stated that the work on a replacement scheme is to be developed in co-design with the sector and will take some time, during which the Department could use the enabling power in order to make improvements to the present scheme, which I think is what you were alluding to. Clause 2, thank you. The Department also states that the revocation powers may be needed to remove redundant provision as part of any improvement, and that any such changes will be subject to draft affirmative regulations. We also asked the Minister if he would be minded to amend the bill to ensure that the current FES could only be repealed or revoked once a suitable co-designed replacement scheme is in place with the same baseline support which is available under the FES. The response stated that the Minister will not bring forward such an amendment as the scheme will not now close at the end of the year, and a replacement scheme is to be co-designed. The Department also believes that it may need powers to revoke specific parts of the legislation in advance of any replacement schemes as part of any work to improve the existing scheme, and these would be subject to approval of the Assembly, which I see as a good thing. The Department does not think it is appropriate to earmark support for one sector, subsector or another, that the Minister needs flexibility to allocate support according to DAERA responsibilities. Are you content, Elaine, John? Is that okay? Is that accurate enough? Yeah, okay. Any comments or queries sought in that regard? This was a piece probably that where we were looking to see why it was just motions and why this wasn't. So this is kind of useful in terms of making sure the legislation is up to date and doesn't have any conflicting parts of it. So members, if there's no further clarification, I'm going to request that members state their position in clause 5. This is your opportunity to have in the record your summarised position. I'm going to go to the Deputy Chair this time, first of all.
Yeah, I'm okay with this one.
Okay with that one. John?
Okay.
Patty?
Yep.
Michelle?
Well, like I understand what the position is, but we'll just hold it back again for next week, just to be consistent.
Reserve. William? Reserve. Okay. Clause 5 of itself is fine for me. Okay. And Aoife? Yep. That's a thumbs up for clause 5, yes. And Anya? What do you get for a high five, Anna? Thumbs up. She really, Aoife really likes that clause. I think that's what that means. Okay. If we ever go to electronic voting in there, we'll have to get her emojis. Okay. Okay. Clause 6, the commencement and the short title. Whoa, now we're getting into it. You thought clause 1 was tricky. Clause 6. This clause provides that the bill will come into operation on the day after the bill. It receives royal assent. The clause also specifies the short title of the bill, namely the Agriculture Act Northern Ireland 2024. Members, you will recall that at our last meeting we had a closed deliberation session with the Bill's Office and considered the possibility of requesting an amendment to the short title to provide clarity for the reader, as a number of us felt that the current title is not reflective of the Bill's content. I'm glad to say, I'm only joking. I was going to say we got it. I would ask your agreement to move into a closed session with the Assembly Bill Clerk to seek advice on Clause 6, and the meeting then will be resumed in closed session at that point. Are we content?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. If you want to just give us a couple of minutes.
They can
Did you go anyway, do you think?
Yeah.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Thank you, members. Okay, before we move to agenda number 10, I would like to confirm that the discussion from the closed session for the record that the committee are content with clause 6 of the bill and will not seek an amendment to the short title. Thank you, members. Okay, agenda item 10 was to be the farming with nature regulations. And you will recall at our meeting on 10th of April, we received an oral briefing from the department when we heard that it intends to make a statutory rule to introduce these regulations to provide DAERA with the legal powers to implement the farming with nature package as part of the continued rollout of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme. Late yesterday, however, the clerk was advised by the examiner of statutory rules that there were drafting errors in the draft SR that are in the pack, and a new draft will be required. Therefore, the consideration of the draft SR itself is postponed until next week. The ESR is hoping to report on the SR early next week. However, we can consider the response we received in DAERA to our letter requesting further clarification on a number of matters. So I'm going to refer you to pages 226 to 227 of the pack to the response. We inquired, when did the department first decide that a farming with nature package was required as part of the SAP to replace the current EFS, and when did the policy work commence on the full FWN package? The response states, since the outset of the development of a farm policy in 2018, to replace the EU-funded CAP, it has been the intention that environmental farming schemes would form part of a farm support package, and was formally named as the Farm with Nature package in 2021. As this proposed draft SR is part of the new SAP, we asked, does the Minister have powers to move funds between relevant schemes under Article 13 of the Farm Sustainability Transitional Provisions Regulations Northern Ireland 2025, or any other regulation? The response states that Article 13 provides the power to move funds between relevant schemes, including schemes under the Farming with Nature package. We inquired, is it the intention of Minister Muir that the voluntary element of the scheme is removed, in part or full, during the course of this current parliamentary mandate? The response states that there have been no discussions to date to remove the voluntary element of the scheme. And members, further to the briefing, the department has also provided clarification that participating businesses will be required to hold a DAERA business ID category 1 or 2. Farm business with a category 1 business ID hold a minimum of 3 hectares of agricultural land. However, category 2 businesses do not have the same minimum requirement. The significant majority of businesses participating in the EFS had a category 1 business ID, and this is likely to be the case with the Farming with Nature transition scheme. And do members have any further clarifications they wish to seek in advance of considering the new SR next week? No? Oh, okay.
Fine.
Okay, members.
We're just waiting. I think we're moving on to that, but they're not there yet. So
Okay.
we can skip to
We're just
correspondence.
we're going to move to correspondence. We'll come back to agenda item 11. So agenda item 12, guys, is correspondence, and we will return to the briefing with
They're
Grace.
just not here yet.
Okay. Agenda item 12 is correspondence. Referred to pages 278 of the pack for a correspondence member. Referred to the 37th report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules at page 279 to 286 of the pack. The report does not contain any SRs of relevance to the committee, and you can tend to note. Members, I refer to pages 287 of the pack for correspondence from the department dated 14th of April regarding the publication of the TB Partnership Steering Group Bovine Tuberculosis in Northern Ireland Blueprint for Eradication. A copy of the blueprint starts at page 289 of the pack. Members, the blueprint notes that the aim of the TBPSG is to work with DAERA on the proposed actions across 3 key pillars of people, cattle and wildlife to reduce bovine tuberculosis herd incidence by 2% by 2030, to halve the current TB levels by 2040 and to achieve eradication by 2050. The Department recognises that some actions will require further policy development and new or amending legislation. The TBPSG will work in partnership with the newly established DAERA Bovine TB Eradication Transformation Programme, which aims to oversee the necessary transformative policies for ministerial agreement. Do members have any comments on that? Or are you content to note?
Michelle first.
Did you want to make any comment on that? Bovine tuberculosis eradication transformation programme?
I didn't indicate. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I thought you were
scrolling.
She's just waving across at you.
Your hand was.
Sorry.
Can there be anything there?
I think the targets aren't very ambitious. You know, we're sitting at over 10%, and we're looking to halve that by 2040, which is 15 years away before we come into line with what the levels are in the south. You know, I just think there needs to be a bit more urgency injected into it, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yes, you're waving and scrolling. You're waving this time. Okay.
Indicated this
Go
time.
ahead.
I suppose my concern, and I've raised this many times, is in relation to the lack of a clear pathway to deal with the issue around wildlife. And I think that's still absent, and I think we were given assurances in previous discussions that there would be a parallel process with regards to that, and I know that there's a number of different views around how that should be done, but I still don't think we can ignore that there is an issue with regards to wildlife. So I'm still concerned about that and the lack of some clarity around where we're going with that.
Okay.
I would agree with that assessment. I think Declan makes a point. You know, 2040 is 15 years away. Like reducing it to 5% of that, like it's abysmal. You know, we're making very little headway if we can't do something better than that.
Any other comments on that at this stage? I've written to the Minister this week, now not as Chair but as a constituency MLA, regarding instances and the pressures and they're facing. I know the Minister has always responded favourably in that regard, but I do share a concern that if there isn't a concerted effort to eradicate this, if it's not tackled now, it actually risks it expanding further. It's almost the reverse of what possibly could happen. There's good stuff in this report. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But it is really important that a concerted effort is achieved at the start. So, in that regard, members, are you content to note that at this point we will return to it, and if there are any further comments, we can respond to it in time? Thank you, members. Okay. Members, I refer you to the 2023 Waterways Ireland Annual Report and Accounts for 2023, starting on page 321 of the pack. Be any comments? Are you content to note? Thank you, members. I refer you to series of emails starting on page 406 of the pack that the committee has been copied into between Mac Waste Limited and NIEA Waste Regulations Unit regarding the hazmat query, and Mac Waste seeking clarification and confirmation from the department relating to an FOI request, querying if environmental legislation has been followed. Members, we have received a number of such email chains to date from Mac Waste Limited. However, there's no specific request being made of the committee as far as I can see. Have you any comments to make in this matter? Is any member aware of any specifics in regard to this? Okay, we'll keep a watching brief on that, members. Okay, members, I refer you to Northern Ireland Executive Brussels Office report from January to March 2025, starting on page 415 of the pack. The areas of interest for the committee are mainly under Section 3. That is Section 3.1 is an update on the agricultural policy developments. Section 3.2 is an update on the environmental policy developments. Any questions or comments? Content to note? Content to note. Thank you. Members, refer you to the report entitled the SNI Delivery Tracking System Investing Activity Report for DAERA. Dated 27th of April 2025, starting at page 450 of the pack. Members, we have scrutinised these reports in some detail in recent months. Are there any further comments, or is there anything to note in regard to the report we've received? No? Okay, members, I refer you to page 23 of the table of papers for correspondence from the Department dated the 29th of April regarding the revised Nutrients Action Programme, 26 of 2029 consultation. The Department will be launching an 8-week public consultation on the revised NAP for 26-29 2029 on Thursday the 1st of May, that's today, seeking views on the proposals for the revised NAP. Officials will provide an oral briefing on the proposals and an outline of the recent NAP review at our meeting on the 8th of May. Any questions or comments? This is something we'll be dealing with next week. Okay? We're going to bounce.
I leave, okay.
You're smiling, I think I know what you're going to do. Okay. Members, we're going to now move back to agenda item 11, if that's okay. That is a research and information raised briefing on public estate value to society. So members, I refer you to pages 236 to 276 in the pack for the raised paper, which examines the approach to the valuation of public land assets such as the public estate within Northern Ireland. So I'm going to welcome Charlotte Hodges, a UKRI student who has been working in RAISE to brief the committee and to answer any questions from the members. Charlotte is accompanied by Mark, and I understand this is your last day, is that correct?
It is, yes.
With the Assembly. So Charlotte, thank you very much for your time working here. I hope you've enjoyed your time, and we look forward now to what you can share with us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Today I'm going to talk through the research paper on page 237 of the pack, which discusses publicly accessible land in Northern Ireland and how the concepts of natural capital and ecosystem services can be beneficial in highlighting the full range of values provided by public land. I'll also summarise how these concepts are being applied in Northern Ireland and other jurisdictions before finishing with some considerations surrounding their implementation. Now, before getting into the paper, I should highlight that I'm not a specialist on these topics. This is simply a reflection of the work available on what's quite an abstract, complex and modern area of research, and hopefully this briefing can introduce members to these concepts within a legislative context and provide sufficient background to support discussions. So today I'll roughly follow the structure of the paper as it's written, beginning with the public estate in Northern Ireland and moving on to introduce the concepts of natural capital and ecosystem services. I'll then highlight the work that's been done in Northern Ireland and some examples from neighbouring jurisdictions before going through the considerations made in section 5 of the paper. I'll begin with the public estate. In light of the ongoing project by Land and Property Services to compile a government land and property register which maps out all government-owned and occupied land and property assets, this paper has instead used research data that's available on publicly accessible land across Northern Ireland. If members turn to page 246 of the pack, they can view a map of this land based on data from the Green Space NI project, which details all publicly accessible land and trails as reported by a wide range of public bodies. These include DAERA, Ordnance Survey NI, the National Trust and a number of district borough councils. As members will see, public land in Northern Ireland encompasses a wide range of types, areas and locations across the region, with large areas of woodlands and mountains visible in rural areas and concentrations of smaller green spaces such as parks and playing fields in urban areas. The map data also shows that when compared by area, as shown on the next page, 247, the vast majority is designated as woodlands and mountains. This map primarily focuses on green spaces. However, the project, the Green Space NI project that is, plans to extend to blue spaces as well. That's going to include publicly accessible waterways, that's your rivers, canals, lakes and reservoirs. Members will note that beaches and coastlines are already available in the current data set that we received. So, valuable insights into how the Northern Ireland public use these spaces are given in the 2021 People in the Outdoors Monitor for Northern Ireland survey, or POMNI for short. This study shows that the public engages in a wide range of outdoor activities and does so for a wide range of reasons, from physical exercise and relaxation to socialising and connecting with nature. Some of those responses are given on page 250 of the pack. Having established public land as highly geographically and socially variable across Northern Ireland, the next stage of the paper turns to the central question of how can this land be valued? Now, typically, land and property is valued in traditional economic terms, so that could be market price, for example. However, in recent decades, some economists have argued that this fails to capture the full range of benefits that nature can provide to society. These include not only tangible goods and services, but also more subtle contributions to well-being, health, culture, and the environment more generally. To address this, researchers and policymakers have increasingly turned to the concepts of natural capital and ecosystem services. Natural capital refers to the stock of all natural resources, both living and non-living, renewable and non-renewable, that underpin the economy and society. Ecosystem services are the flows of those natural capital assets from one place or one form to another, which can generate benefits to people such as environmental regulation and cultural services. This change in thought saw a number of landmark publications in the 1990s and 2000s, such as the Global 2005 Millennium Assessment, which have led to the popularisation of the natural capital approach as a practical framework for decision making. At its core, a natural capital approach involves a system of systematically accounting for the extent, condition and value of natural assets and the multiple services they provide. And this process is often referred to as natural capital accounting. These indicators from these accounts can then be used for decision making. This process can be applied in public and private land or natural asset valuation, and it can be applied in urban and rural settings, making it a versatile tool to address a number of cross-cutting policy areas, including health, biodiversity, sustainability, climate change and the economy. In Northern Ireland, the Environmental Improvement Plan commits to adopting a natural capital approach and cites this cross-cutting aspect of the method as a motivating factor. The region is also included in UK-wide natural capital accounts and participates in shared island initiatives with the Republic of Ireland, such as the All-Ireland Pollinator Plan, which uses ecosystem services concepts. Within Northern Ireland, natural capital concepts have been used in a handful of studies. For example, Derry London Derry City Council and Strabane District Council have conducted studies to assess the value of local green spaces, while organisations like Northern Ireland Environment Link have explored both urban and agricultural applications of the approach. Other parts of the UK have also adopted these concepts to various degrees. Scotland, England and Wales each have their own natural capital accounts and have developed various tools and indicators to support policy and project appraisal. For instance, Scotland has established a natural capital asset index as an economic indicator for sustainable development in Scotland's National Performance Framework, the Environment Strategy and Scotland's National Strategy for Economic Transformation. The Republic of Ireland, too, has established the Natural Capital Island Organisation and is working to integrate ecosystem services into national statistics and policy. It should be clarified that there are significant points of criticism of the natural capital concept and arguments for and against its use in decision-making contexts. Often these concerns relate to environmental ethics issues, or issues of limited knowledge and understanding of ecosystems. However, there are practical considerations in a legislative context to consider. And I'll summarise some of these points regarding the Northern Ireland context. These points are just given in the last section of the paper as well. Firstly, as I've already mentioned, the Environmental Improvement Plan includes the commitment to adopt a natural capital approach. Members of the committee may wish to clarify if any progress has been made and to what extent the approach is going to be adopted. For example, would this be department-wide or for individual decisions? Would this then affect areas of existing policy and statutory requirements in other areas such as agricultural practices? For example, the environmental farming scheme. Given financial pressures in the department, is the natural capital approach to valuation informing decisions currently, and are there any specific instances where the concept has led to action? Secondly, since the natural capital concept frequently highlights values of nature to disciplines other than the environment, for example, health, economy, education and committees, is there interest in interdepartmental collaboration in adopting this approach? Are other departments aware of the concept? And would DERA be in a position of leadership regarding executive-wide adoption of the concept? Would DERA be responsible for any costs incurred, or could the cost be shared with other interested departments? Thirdly, departments across the executive are obligated to identify surplus land in the public estate. Would adopting a natural capital approach within DARA impact this identification? And how would this be approached if some departments used this method of valuation and others did not? How does the value of land change relative to its market price if it's valued through a natural capital approach? And what would the impact of this be? And lastly, since natural capital concepts can be applied in both urban and rural spaces, including public land and agricultural working land types, does this imply additional value of agricultural assets to the public beyond the usual provisions of food and material goods? So at this point, I'd like to thank members for their attention, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that they may have.
Excellent. Charlotte, thank you very much. I think you're going to have a very successful career, if not here, somewhere. It was a really good presentation, and it's a really, really good report. Very comprehensive and actually quite thought-provoking. But I'm particularly pleased to see the Northern Ireland examples of using the natural capital and how that's been measured. Some that I know about at Minnoburn and Bog Meadows that are picked up in there, which is really good, and that they're included in the Northern Ireland EIP. But then there's also, when you read further down, there's the piece around Caffrey where they're looking at farming as well. So which is really good to see, because it's that circular economy piece and things that are important to Northern Ireland. But just wanting to know, is this an approach, do you think, that is gaining traction in mainstream policy making? And is it something that this committee should be considering in terms of any new dairy policies and indeed legislation that may be coming down the line?
I think, given what I've read, I can certainly say that it is a popular concept. There are a number of frameworks in use in different jurisdictions throughout the UK, and obviously in the Republic of Ireland as well, and there's a link to European legislation there as well. The SEEA is adopted by 94 countries, I believe, globally, and that's the UN initiated framework. In terms of the future application, my thinking is that given the mention specifically of natural capital within the environmental improvement plan, it reads as something that the department may be in a position to give maybe they have a specialist in their team, or maybe they have access to specialists that might be able to advise on specifically how it would work for Northern Ireland and what their expectations are regarding that.
I appreciate that. And there's something that's just, I'm going to bring Declan in shortly, but there's something that's coming to mind. We had witnesses in earlier who are responsible for quite a number of public-facing events in and around the farming and agri and rural sector, and this is something that I think is probably missing from what they can, the value-adding piece, and I think that's a part of our natural capital, and this is something I think, Clerk, if we're mindful even to, if we can, pick this out and share it with them. It was the Northern Ireland shows, just to be fair, and I think they have an intrinsic natural capital that hasn't been fully captured, and I think this is a really timely piece of work and a timely presentation. Thank you, Charlotte. Declan.
First of all, Charlotte, I want to commend you on an excellent report and wish you well in your next stage, wherever you move on to, and in your future career. So thank you for that. And I'm glad to note that in your report you mentioned that the environmental improvement plan commits to adopting this approach. I know this may be a question for the department, and we're due to get a presentation in relation to farming with nature, but in your research, have you noted if the department has incorporated this into their new farming with nature draft strategy, or have you discovered that in the course of your research at all? Or
probably it wasn't within the brief, Declan, but I mean, I think in light of Charlotte's paper, I think anything that comes forward that you potentially ask us to look at, it's another string to that bow. So I suppose she's left us a legacy in that regard to Susie and myself, to another lens to look at, and I think it's a valid point, because it's the commitment there is an environmental improvement plan to use the approach.
It's actually better for us that we're not having the farming with nature presentation this week, because we'll be able to use your paper to quiz the officials whenever the presentation does happen. So it's a great piece of work, and we'll certainly be using it in our scrutiny going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Declan. And John.
Sure. Thank you. Before I start, can I add to the thanks for the presentation and the report, and also Charlotte to the good wishes to you. Chair, I could spend many hours on this subject. I promise you I'm not going to try to do that. There are topics here that never cease to amaze me. For example, the public estate. Do we actually know the size of the public estate, and do we know, and I suggest that we don't know, its usefulness or its value for money to the public? For example, there are huge pieces of estate with hospitals sitting on them that are mostly not publicly accessible, and there are reasons for that, and certainly in some cases, which I totally understand. However, I reckon that those pieces of estate will never show in surplus to requirements registers, nor will they ever be assessed on how useful they are to public accessibility or to biodiversity or the environment. So I think there's a massive piece of work required there by government generally, and by through an interdepartmental approach as well. I'm keen to know, and I'm making those examples because I want to know if any of that was picked up in the report. Is there any obvious escape of information because of the processes there that I outlined? Second to that, we know that Northern Ireland Water, for example, huge public estate, some publicly accessible, some not. DAERA, likewise. Department of Health have mentioned finance. If we look at the estate outside this window, which is clearly publicly accessible, but they will have other places that aren't. And I want to know how we can, in your opinion, from the work done on the report, how we can best capture two things. First of all, the benefit to biodiversity, and secondly, the benefit to public accessibility, and also where that's being maximised and where it could be improved, if that all makes sense.
So, in terms of ways that you might go about getting that data, maybe perhaps in terms of biodiversity, there are options there. So you can either take an approach which integrates, for example, if you had a natural capital framework developed for, say, Northern Ireland, there would be a choice as to whether you included biodiversity, for example, as either a natural asset itself or as its own ecosystem service. There would be then, in addition to that, not just the options in terms of natural capital approach, it would be, for example, maybe an independent biodiversity strategy that exists out like extra to a natural capital framework. Or potentially, even in the case of Wales, for example, which I described through this paper, they don't specifically take or use the language surrounding natural capital. They have what they would term a well-being framework, which then includes environmental aspects within it. So there are many, many ways of going about setting up those structures, and there are lots of options from what I could tell during the research.
Thank you, Charlotte, through you, Chair, for that, because those are conversations we can have with DAERA. And in relation to the non-DAERA pieces of public estate, we can try to get that information through other processes, but thank you for that.
Thank you, John. Okay, members, thank you very much for that. If members are agreed, I think we could certainly should be looking to share the piece of research with the department in regard to, because there are some matters that you have highlighted and some queries that have been raised, and maybe look for their comments in regard to that. I think would be useful for us, and I think John's points are well made. This extends way beyond the Department of Agriculture, and there is much within the public estate that we do need to quantify better, and this could be a very useful piece of work to help us on our way, Charlotte.
Yep,
so on behalf of the committee, thank you so much for your report and your time producing this for us and your presentation today. And we wish you very well in your future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, members. We're now on agenda item 13, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, which is our forward work programme. So members, a draft forward work programme can be found in table papers at pages 25 to 28. And members, as the clerk advised by email just prior to recess that due to a prior commitment for the chair, that would be me, the date for the Fermanagh trip has been moved to the 11th and 12th of June. The committee team will bring forward a draft itinerary as soon as possible, but in the meantime, please confirm with Michael Greer as soon as possible if you're attending on one or both days, and if you need overnight accommodation, there will be a full programme of visits and meetings. It'll be very worthwhile, I do believe, especially to be out that part of the province and to give a little bit of balance. Okay, members, are there any other items of business?
Sure. See in the Balmoral Show meeting, whereabouts in the, what stand are we in, or whereabouts are we? Do we have that information? Where in the Balmoral Show is the
B44 to 45, isn't that right?
We'll have a map. We'll have that map and the directions. I'll go out with my shepherd's crook, and I'll bring my dog with me and whistle and see if Minnie will round you up. And I don't want to see you stand at any beef burger stand or anything like that too early in the morning.
And to see if anybody whistles back.
Absolutely.
Mushrooms.
Yes.
I noticed that on our forward work programme for the 22nd of May that we're receiving an oral briefing from the department with regards to eel fishing regulations. I'm mindful of the fact that we actually haven't heard from the fishery itself during our time as a reconstituted, I suppose, for a better term, committee. And no doubt they will have a view on those regulations. Could I ask that we do get a briefing, perhaps even on the same day, from Loughney Fisheries, please?
Sure. No issue with that. Yep, happy enough, guys. Yep, makes sense. Thank you, Michelle. Any other matters of business, guys? Anything else? Nope. Okay, agenda item 15, date and time, place of next meeting. Our next meeting is Thursday, the 8th of May, 2025, in Parliament Buildings at 10 a.m. Thank you for your time today. That was good business, guys.
Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound.